Hey chat, how's it going? Welcome back to another Getting Started with FUZE4. How are you all doing? It's good to see lots of familiar faces as always. I'm going to do some quick hellos, and once we've done that, we'll be getting right into it. And of course, saying hello to Dave as well. For now, let's see who's here in chat. I see Voxy. Hello, Voxy. Movies XP. Someone unknown. FUZE Arena. Who's that? Arch. Disco. The Bookmark, welcome. Nintendo Plush. Alia, welcome Alia. RJ the Great. Billy Fallon. Sharon. Tacoma Nomad. Ben Taylor. Arch. Whooper Gamer. Good to see you all. And welcome to today's stream. Dave, are you there? Are you ready for some fusing?
Ready for some fusing.
That's what I like to hear. Let me bring the volume down on our little start track here.
It's frantic. It's really motivational. That
it is. That's the music you hear when you're about to do some coding.
Yeah.
How are you doing today, Dave?
Frantic violins.
Yeah. How are you today, Dave?
I'm very good. Yeah, it's always very exciting to do this. Really happy that we managed to get another one sort of in fairly good timing.
Yeah. I am
leaving it for ages.
I'm so grateful for your time today, and yeah, really glad that we can continue our adventure here in FUZE today. I'm going to switch over from the start card to, I suppose for the moment it will be your Switch, won't it?
If it is, then it can be. Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm fine with. Yeah, let's do mine first, then, and we can do a quick recap.
Sure. Yeah.
A few things.
So I suppose while Dave's getting ready for that, I will say this is the second part of our streams with FUZE4 and with Dave. So if you're watching this as a VOD at a later date, definitely do check out the first part first, and you can always come back to this one. But I'm guessing most people will have already seen last week's, or 2 weeks ago now, and are jumping in, because we're going to be kind of building upon the stuff that we already covered last time. Is that right?
Yes, that is exactly right. Yeah, there are, because so as it was going on last time, and we were trying to sort of cram a lot in, and I'm always very happy to talk about these things, and it's always very exciting. So afterwards, I kind of realized, hang on, I didn't talk about this or this, and these are really key concepts. But of course, that's always going to be the case. That there's always more to learn.
Yes.
So I doubt we're ever going to be able to have a stream that's as comprehensive as covering every coding concept. Otherwise, I mean, we'll be here for weeks. So I'm hoping to do a recap of the things that we learned last time, the basics, test your memory, perhaps a little bit.
Yes.
And put you on the spot as much as possible. And then use that as a jumping off point to look at some slightly more complex concepts that are really, really important to get your head around when you're looking at something like a more more sophisticated program.
Yes.
Let's say.
Excellent. Yeah, and I guess I should say as well, just like last time, I am really coming to this from zero, although now I can't say that anymore because we did have our last one, so I've built up a little bit of knowledge, and yeah, we'll definitely be putting that to the test today. I'm just going to say hello to a couple more people who joined a little later, so
I will make a new project in this meantime.
Okay. Hey Lucas, welcome to the stream. Piano Fire, Ben Taylor, One Eye, Noah, Lucy and Vella, Steve's Gaming. Steve Gaming says, hello folks, Dave rocks. Agreed. Thomas Sampson, Kat, welcome to today's stream. Mercury Angel, hello. Yeah, I come from 0.1 now, not from 0, so yes, absolutely. Hey Samuel, nice. Okay, so Dave, you got a fresh project up today.
Yes, indeed. I would also like to extend a hello to those people that you mentioned in chat, because most of them I do know, and there's a good few FUZE peeps in the chat right now, which is very, very cool. It's always nice to see. So yes, hello to all you guys as well, and thank you very much, Steve. But I rock only a fraction as much as you rock, I would say. Just to deflect that compliment right back at you there. Okay. Right, so we've got a blank project, which is always the scariest place to begin. But I thought we would just start with just recapping the three sort of main concepts that I wanted to be the main take home from last time. The fundamental building blocks that you absolutely have to acquire, really. I'll use that word, that you have to acquire in order to really get off the ground when it comes to coding. And really with these three main things, you can do a lot more than you realize. So we'll just look at them and then I'll talk about them again a little bit. And obviously at any point, Dom, just, throw questions in and I'm always happy to answer anything at all.
Yeah,
so,
I'll be keeping my eye on chat as well. And if there's any kind of pertinent questions at a particular point, I'll jump in with those.
So we have loops. Loops is definitely a good place to start. It's something that looks like this. I liken it to a sandwich, and I likened it to a sandwich in the last video in that you have two pieces of bread, a beginning and an end, and a filling, something happening in between. And so we've got a beginning of the loop, an end of the loop, and then some stuff in the middle. So let's say that we're clearing the screen. Let's say that we are printing some words. Let's say we do. Oh, I've got the wrong keyboard localization set up, of course, on here. Let's say that we're going to print hello VideoDojo, and we're going to update the screen. Right, so this is something like a main loop, and most programs, in fact, I'm going to say all. Obviously, these things don't tend to be 100% true every single time. All the time. There's always an exception to every rule, but most of the time, a program, certainly every video game program, centers around this main loop, which is after your program has done all the setup, everything that loading everything, doing all that stuff, it will enter into this loop where it will remain for the rest of the program until it's turned off, until you've exited. And during that main loop, everything is happening. It's checking everything. It's checking what phase of the game you are in. It's throwing things around the screen, it's checking for controller inputs, it's doing all of that stuff. So a main loop looks something like this. And this is obviously a very, very bare bones, very basic one. In fact, let's just also make the text size something here. I'll just put it inside the loop. We'll put 100 like so, and we'll run this program and we have this. And that's all we've got. So it's a loop, it's constantly doing this. It's trying to do this as fast as it can, or up to a limit of 60 times per second. So this loop is executing 60 times per second, and that's where we get the term FPS from here. So this is a 60 FPS game loop. It's doing this. It's managing to do this 60 times a second, which, if we had stuff going on the screen, would look very smooth and whatnot. So that's loops.
And last time when we ended up getting a little bit more advanced and a little bit more complex with what we were doing with our text, we kind of were resizing and changing the color, and all of those were existing within the loop as well.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what, let's use that as a way to go into variables. So variables are... I always hesitate on this one because if you are a seasoned programmer and if you know a few things, then the answer, whenever you sort of package something up in a very easy to explain and easy to digest nugget of information, there's always more to it. It's like, well, maybe it's not exactly that. It's not exactly this. But I like to think of them as labels for information. You can also think of them as like an address for something. This is where something is stored. We're just storing a number or a thing, a word, something. We're storing it somewhere and we're giving it this label. So for example, we could store the number 10, or actually let's start at 100 since we've already got it there. We can store the number 100 in a label or a box called size.
I think the analogy you used last time that really stuck with me was the idea that they are containers of a sort, like physical boxes that we are applying like a little Dymo label to or whatever. And
you have to reference. I love those things. One of my favorite possessions as a kid was a Dymo label maker. Yeah. Just obsessively making labels for everything. Maybe that's why I took to variables so much, actually. Yeah.
So essentially, it's up to us what we put in those boxes and how we refer to it.
Yes, the name is totally arbitrary, and this is something that I always really try and get into people's heads and the workshops. Just because we've done this size, this has no bearing on any size of anything.
Yeah.
As you can see, this word is not highlighted. It's not like these functions here with the brackets that are highlighted in blue. These are specific instructions that have some predefined set of actions that it will go and do. And sometimes they need information, sometimes they don't. But for example, this one called text size,
Mm-hmm.
this changes the size of the text,
Yeah.
not just having the word size. It's where we use the variable that makes it appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
So we've called our variable size and we're going to use it in this function, which makes it control the size. Now we could call this something totally different, like socks.
Mm-hmm.
And of course we'd have to put socks here.
Yep.
Now it's absolutely valid. You can absolutely do that. It's just not super helpful for future you to come back to this and to have to remember, hang on, socks, wait, what was that? Is it to do with socks? No, it's not. I'm using socks for the size, and it can get a bit messy. Now, obviously, in a program this scale, it really is fine. But when you have a lot of variables, I mean, most programs that are really doing something quite sophisticated, i.e. a game program, they have hundreds of variables, and they'll be all over the place, and they have to be named in a way that makes it easier later to manage your stress levels when the project gets quite large, because that's something that it's actually quite difficult for a beginner to see at the moment. And I will definitely talk about this in a bit more detail as we get into more of the practical context for it. But it's something that's quite difficult to see at the minute is when you've learned these basic things and you've got a ball moving around the screen, or you've got, a program with some variables, you've got a few conditions being checked, being able to then turn that into a full game is such a jump in size. It's quite difficult to really see the path towards that. And there's a few best practice sort of techniques that you can pick up early that will really, really help. You start as you mean to go on sort of thing. It will really help you manage getting to that point. Because I remember that being a difficult thing for me is, I can get this going and I can get these simple things happening. But what if I want a title screen and I want this title screen to fade out when it goes to this screen, but I want that one to fade out when it, this sort of thing. When you get into those questions, it can get a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's good to, just bear in mind a few techniques, which we will absolutely go into. And one of those techniques is sensible variable names, for sure. So that was a big tangent to just say, this is a label for the number 100. And we're going to use it in the text size. Obviously, now if we change this here, then it will change for us elsewhere in the program. And super useful when you've got this loads of places in the program. Sorry, Dom, didn't mean to cut you off.
That was exactly what I was about to say. I was going to say, initially, I didn't really understand why we would need to do that, but it was the moment last week when you mentioned that this could be placed multiple times for different uses throughout your code, and then you're only changing it in one place rather than going through and manually changing it every time that 400 in this case appears.
Exactly that. I think it was in the context of getting a ball, like a circle moving around the screen, and we had the radius of the circle as a variable. And then later on in the program, we were checking where the ball was, and we were checking if it had reached the edge of the screen. And to do that, we need to add and subtract the radius from the X and Y position of the circle. And because we had like 4 different places in the code where that was, to use the hard-coded number every time. So I say hard coded there with a slight bit of italics on it because it's what we refer to as sort of, for example, if I didn't have a variable for this and I had it here, this is a hard coded value. We're just using the value as it is in the function. But when we have a variable, it will help us out later. It's not hard coded. It's something that we can change easily. We don't have to go through the program, find every single place we find that number and change it. So yeah, it's also just much easier to just look at a word and remember, oh yeah, that's size, than it is to look at the number 400 and go, oh yeah, that's the size.
Yeah.
Easy in when it's just in a function like text size. But of course, when you've got if statements within loops that are doing all different things, it's very, very handy to have nicely named variables. Okay, so I will quickly add something to this, which was that we were, in fact, let's just make the size a bit smaller to begin with. And then we started to really look at, why we use variables for things, which is to allow us to change their contents. Because if that was just the number 100, it is always going to be the number 100. I can't change 100 into something else. 100 is 100. I can't redefine the number 100, but I can redefine the label for this number. We can say, I want to change what is in this variable and do something to it. So for example, we can say size equals size plus 1. So we take the value of size, add 1 to it, and we then put that into our box called size instead.
Yeah.
And obviously it's in a loop, so it will keep happening. And we have this that I believe this is sort of the thing that we had last time.
And I think it's a very great visual reminder of the fact that loop is, I mean, it sounds obvious, but looping as we go. It's not just running it once and then that's it. It keeps running background through everything that's there. So that's why we're seeing that size increase. Is that correct?
Absolutely right. Yeah, completely right. And it's, I know it, like you say that it sounds obvious, and in a sense it does when you say it, but it isn't, because program flow is what you're talking about here.
Okay.
When you've got a like obviously the program flow in this example is very, very simple. It goes set this variable and then just do this forever, right? That's the program flow. But when we have more loops and functions being called that have if statements that have loops inside them, the program flow is much more complicated.
Right.
And you really do need to bear in mind where you are at different times. And the more you think about it, sort of the better you get at being in that program flow. And it's also another reason why indentation is so useful. And when I say indentation, I just mean this gap here that we put before the command when it's inside a loop. Is just to signify that this is inside a loop. So we don't have to take a look at it and sort of have to read everything and go and find repeat for ourselves and think, hang on, where's the beginning, where's the end? Now, it's optional in FUZE, which is something we covered in the last video, which is that in the last stream, which is that FUZE is super forgiving. It lets you kind of use your own formatting style. If you really wanted to, you could do this. And I do not condone this.
Oh, no. Yeah.
This is perfectly valid code right here in FUZE. And in fact, in many, many languages, this is perfectly valid code because different languages tend to do things very differently. But for example, in something like a professional language like C, the white space, the spaces between things really doesn't matter. All that matters is the markers that you have. For example, like you have to have a semicolon after every single instruction, right? And so these sorts of things mean that you don't have to worry about the formatting. But FUZE doesn't even need that. It is super, super forgiving, and it's not case sensitive. But of course, this is not very easy to read. It might be cool looking, and you get to say, oh, I wrote this whole program in one line of code, but it's not helpful. Not helpful to anyone, and especially not to the future version of yourself that has to come back and read that again and think, why did I do this to myself?
Right.
So yeah, indentation, super important. And we will also look at indentation again when we get onto this next concept. So the last concept was if statements. Conditional instructions with something that's being checked. It's something that's being compared. So for instance, we have if size is greater than 400, then I'm going to write my end if here, and then I'm going to tab and indent again because we're inside an if statement. That's another case in which we conventionally indent some instructions, and we can do something like redefine the size back to 100. So start it again.
Yeah. So
we are taking a statement like size greater than 400, and this is a condition. It is either greater than 400 or it isn't. There is no in between option here. It can't be kind of greater than 400. It is either true or it's false. And if the condition in an if statement like this is true, then the code in the middle will be executed. And obviously we can have multiple things happening here. We could change the color. We could do all sorts of stuff, which is what you tend to do when your programs get more sophisticated. You'll have an if statement with multiple conditions. If the size is greater than 400 and something else is happening or this is happening, then do these things. So
in this case, we've got our size, which once it's reached, it's going to go back to 100. It's going to reset back down. And that was something that really was quite eye-opening to me last time with the if statements about how we would start to build more complex code with more, conditions that can be kind of built on top of each other and kept, getting deeper and deeper with these things. So that's.
I'm really glad that you said all that there. Yeah, that's put that really, really well done, because that's took me back to what I wanted to say, which is these three concepts. And I do try and say this to the workshop people as well, because I'll show off these three concepts in a program very, very similar to this in an assembly, which, even though it's not super visually exciting to just see some text get bigger, although you'd be surprised, because more often than not, like, we get raucous screaming when they just see text getting big on the screen. Which never fails to amuse me.
Yeah.
But it really is true that with these three concepts, you can do an unbelievable amount. Now, yes, it is also true that when it gets to more sophisticated programs, we use other more advanced forms, like more advanced concepts, to make it so we don't have to use so many if statements and loops and variables, and we can sort of condense things down and make it a bit more abstract and a bit more efficient. But to be honest, all this complexity, all this stuff, it all boils down to variables being checked by if statements.
Yeah.
And that there is a way of representing almost anything that you can think of game-wise with a series of variables and some if statements. So you can construct, Pong or something like that very, 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 very easily with just these three concepts without ever bringing in something more advanced. Which is just a really good thing to realize. They are truly the fundamental building blocks, which is why Fuse focuses on them so much, because if you unlock these three things, you are already coding. You are already becoming a programmer.
Well, I think I certainly felt this way, and I'm sure chat agrees, that as you went through these last week, and I'm really glad that we've done a recap here to just kind of get everybody back into the headspace of these three foundational tools that we have. You can really see the ways that they interact with each other and build on top of each other. And it may be that later down the line, we kind of relegate some of these tools, because we do explore things that are a little bit more useful as things get bigger, as you've just said. But for now, they are really essential principles for us to get our heads around and to use as our starting points.
That's summed up brilliantly, Dom. Yeah, great for that. I'll say. Yeah, that's exactly right. And even when you do acquire the more advanced concepts, and you've got all these flashy things and very cool data setup and all this, at some point you're going to write a long if statement. There is no avoiding it. You're going to have some sort of loop that's checking a bunch of stuff and a big if statement in there to say do this, like if this is the case. It's just, you're going to have that, and you can go to some quite obscene ends to avoid doing those things. And I've actually been working on a program just in my own time with a friend of mine, which is building a simple chess game using just terminal commands, basically. So just having like a terminal printed chess game.
Wow.
And we've been constructing some AI for this chess game. And when we've been programming all the different move cases for the different pieces, we were sort of, because he's a much, much better programmer. I mean, far and away, astronomically better than I am. And so I'm learning a lot from him. And we went to all of this trouble doing this very hyper complicated stuff by representing things in binary, just to make the knight's moving pattern a bit more easy to write in code. And then we wrote all this code, and he said, actually, this is just doing this. And he wrote one if statement. And it was like, oh, right, okay. That's it, is it? Okay, right. So more often than not, actually, sometimes it can just obfuscate these things. And it boils down to, like I say, these to these concepts. Actually, I will just quickly add to this if statement. Another way to do what we've got here, and to incorporate another fundamental part of if statement logic, is to use an else. And we can say, put this inside here. So now we're not increasing the size unconditionally. It's not just always happening. So we're saying, if the size is greater than 400, then we redefine size to 100. But if that is not true, if size is not greater than 400, then we increase size instead. So we can kind of wrap it up into one statement, just in one if else. So it's another way of using ifs. Else is very important because when you have a binary option, as in this is either true or it's false, then you can do something if it's true and something if it's not true. I mean, we could also swap this around. We could say if exclamation mark size is greater than 400, right? We could actually, because exclamation mark just means not. So essentially just reverse this thing.
Okay.
So we could actually say if it's not true that size is greater than 400, now we'd have to swap our statements around. We'd have to put size equals size plus 1 here. Is true that size is not greater than 400. Which means it is greater than 400. So you see that, there's a way of always making it more of a complicated, but we don't need to in this case. I just want to demonstrate that that is an option for us.
Well, I think that's a really lovely demonstration because it kind of, for me, it's the reminder that you're building up a toolbox that you pick and choose the right things at the right time. Because obviously that seemed quite backwards from how you may lay that out, but knowing that exclamation mark does what it does will be incredibly handy at certain times. That's something to know and to keep in mind. So yeah, building up that selection of tools, right tool for the right job kind of situation.
Ooh, actually, that's given me an idea of where to jump off from.
Excellent.
Here.
Yeah.
When you say building the right tool for the right job, because this then gets into some more, let's say, I hesitate to say advanced, okay? But I say things like advanced and beginner in the context of this beginner landscape, right? So when I say advanced, I mean on the beginner side of on the end of the beginner side of the equation. Yeah,
we're progressing through. We're progressing through now to an extra layer of knowledge.
Yeah. You gave me the idea because so the two things that I wanted to really look at, actually three, but we'll start with these two. These two concepts that I really want to show to you are arrays and functions.
Okay.
Now, I was thinking of doing arrays first, but actually, what I'd like to do is to swap it around and to do functions first because of the way that you just put that previous sentence, which is building the correct tools for the job. Because functions are, it's such a huge level up that you get to go through when you realize that you can do this, and it's also a difficult one to really acquire. So how should we do this? Maybe we should start a project for yourself, actually.
Yep.
And then we can. What I'd like to do is to write a very simple quiz sort of setup.
Okay, lovely. Okay. So I'm gonna take the reins for a little bit on the coding side. Before I do, just because I've seen there's some really amazing comments in chat, and I want to whenever we've got a little moment like this, I just want to kind of read some of them out. So Mercury Angel says the concept of variables is so cool to me for some reason. Arch went on to say, I love variables. Keeping things organized and tidy is so satisfying. Dymo heads, which is very funny. JD reminds everyone to format their code, which, I think absolutely. And Voxy said, I really like that Dave isn't just explaining how coding works in Fuse, but also shares good coding practices that could also apply anywhere. Cool gamer emote.
I'd like to just touch on that comment, actually, because that hits close to home, because, the sort of the ethos behind Fuse very much is not, here's the coding application that you should be using forever. Okay, this is a stepping stone for you to go from the likes of visual coding languages, something like Scratch or GBG or Purple Mash or these sort of things, especially in early years education. This is a forgiving text-based environment that you can sort of cut your teeth on, to then when you approach something like C down the line, like we want to basically make more programmers. That's Fuse's goal. Yeah. And so to that end, I really, really like that Voxy's touched on that, because, it kind of makes it very explicit that it's not just stuff that's good in Fuse, and we can talk about stuff that's just good in Fuse, but this is very much aiming at it is your programming journey. You know, FUZE wants to be a part of your programming journey, improve your abilities, you know, with FUZE and get comfortable with these sort of things. And then by all means, you know, look at other things, look at more professional languages, see what is more capable and move on to those. But maybe always, you know, keep FUZE as something to play with. Yeah, anyway, sorry. It's a point that's very close to my heart. So
that's such an important reminder as well that you know, having those little things like how forgiving FUZE is with formatting, for example, are all little things that make this a friendly environment to get started in. Hey Chalupa, welcome to the stream. Okay, I'm going to switch over to my Switch now, and I was copying along just as you were going, but
oh, cool.
I'm guessing we probably don't want what's here at the moment.
No, actually, in this case, yeah, let's get rid of what we've got.
Yep.
We are actually going to rewrite a lot of that.
You know, I think it's good to go from 0. I was mostly just warming up my fingers.
Good.
Also, could you just remind me, how do I increase the text size?
Oh, sure. There's a couple of ways to do it, but the easiest way is to hold down ZL on the Joy-Con and then push up on the right stick.
There we go. All right, I just want to make sure it's nice and legible.
And then if you're using the USB keyboard, you can click in the left stick to get rid of the keyboard on screen, so we get a bit more real estate.
Perfect. Yep.
And yeah, okay. I just saw a comment as well that I really liked, which was functions are basically build your own node on, which is going to give you a bit of an idea of what's to come.
Okay, I am even more excited about functions.
Dom, when you make your own function, give it an ASCII face like an okay, we can do that as well. Yeah, okay. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a way of doing something fairly inefficiently.
Okay.
Totally valid. And I do not mean for it to be like you shouldn't code like this. At the end of the day, you totally can. But this is just another concept to sort of acquire, to sort of up your game, if you like. And it's very important to do it the inefficient way first before you do it the efficient way, because you know, you have to make the mistake yourself in life. I mean, this just applies to life generally. You know, if somebody says, it's like when your parents, you know, they might have told you a million times to do this, do that. And you say, you know, yeah, okay, yeah, whatever. And then you go and make that exact same mistake. And they say, well, I told you so. And this is just how humans work. We have to like hit the brick wall ourselves in order to see why we should have, you know, taken a different route in the first place.
Yeah.
But if we take that different route, then we never really get to fully embody the lesson. So that's why we're going to do it this way around.
Makes total sense. We need to understand the reasons why we do and don't do things certain ways, and the best way to do that is to try it out ourselves and make those mistakes sometimes.
Exactly that. So we're not actually going to. This is going to be one of the rare cases where we're not going to use like a main loop for a program, and we are going to use something that I don't really like to recommend too much. But there's a function called sleep, which just sort of adds a pause to the processor. So it essentially says just sort of wait for a second. It's very useful for something really simple, like a very easy sort of, you know, displaying text in different sequences. And we're going to use that to just display text in a series of, you know, with like a series of delays. So what we're going to do is just print a line of text in a particular color. So let's say that we're creating a quiz, right?
Okay.
And we want to print a question on the screen. And we want that question to be in a particular color, in a particular size. And we want that to be on the screen for a set number of seconds before something else happens, like you're able to the answer, for instance, right? So let's do that.
Okay.
So first of all, what we should do, you know, we might have now. I know that we don't have, but we might have stuff on the screen that we want to get rid of. So let's just put a clear statement in there. Let's just put clear, and then open and close the brackets. Which just, if you don't have anything in the brackets, it will automatically clear the screen with the color black. If you put any color in the brackets, it will clear with that color. Let's leave it black for now, just to have a nice high contrast visual for the viewers. So if you go to the next line, And on this, we're going to either set the color or set the size of the words we want to say. So either the ink function or the text size function. I'll leave it up to you which one you want to do.
Size.
You want text size,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go 100. Is that about?
Yeah, sure.
Big enough?
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, obviously, it's easy enough to change. So next line, we'll do the ink color. So if you put ink, and then we just want a color in these brackets. So whatever color you'd like to do, any color at all. Dom. Nothing that anything that begins with B, ends in E. Just leave it up to you. I'll just leave it totally up to you.
The world is my oyster with this. I could pick
the world is
any. The world is my seafood dish with this.
It really is.
What am I gonna pick?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like that was. I almost Darren Browned you into that one.
Oh, my fingers just started typing. I hadn't even decided yet. It was amazing.
Oh God, very funny. So,
sorry, Steve's Gaming in chat says beginning with B and ending with E, bronze.
Actually, just check if bronze is a color in Fuse. I think it might be. If it highlights green, then it is.
It is. Yeah.
Unfair play, Steve. All right, you managed to find something there. I'm now frantically trying to think of others. Beige, I suppose, does.
Oh yeah, of course.
But that's really just bisque.
Yeah. Bisque by another name.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. It's just poor man's bisque, budget bisque, really. Okay, right. Enough messing around. Let's print a line of text. So I'd like you to think of a question that you're going to ask in this quiz setup. You can make it about whatever you want, of course. It doesn't have to be anything to. I mean, it can be anything at all. Okay. And if you can't think of anything, I usually just go with like a very basic, like capital cities sort of thing. But I mean,
I've got a good question in mind, I think.
Okay, sweet. So you want to print, and then in brackets, in speech marks as well, inside these brackets, you'll put, your question. Nice. Okay, brilliant. It's a good question that has an objectively correct answer.
Correct.
So that's very helpful.
Yes.
So we get to go to the next line. Now, if we were to run this program here, one might think that this should, show us some words on the screen. And it won't.
Okay.
And the reason for that is we need to use a function called update if we want to see anything at all on the screen. It's one of those. I mean, this is a slightly unintuitive sort of function because it's not something I think it's really, really good for a beginner to just say, well, print this, go, and it will show it. But it's also kind of good because it leaves a lot of things open. Like, well, how long do you want this to be on screen for? If we write the function update, what that does is it says send everything that you've been putting on your screen memory. So when you write print and clear clear text size ink, print this, it's actually sort of drawing all of that onto a screen that only exists in the Switch's memory. Right. It's like a screen made of just numbers. Okay.
Yep.
It's just a representation of a screen. And then when you write update, it goes, okay, take all that information and actually put it on the Switch screen.
Yep. That's the Nintendo Switch prepping the stage behind the curtains, and then we're telling them to be pulled aside. Got it. Okay.
Exactly that. And so when you also, just to throw another pinch of salt in there, when you do that, so when you say it's prepping the stage behind the curtain, there isn't just one prepping area. There is a default prepping area, which is something called the frame buffer. So the thing which is buffering the frames that are shown, but you can also create your own stage preparation areas, and you can create a little screen to draw something to, and then you could draw that over your main screen, for example, like a mini map or something like that. You could draw that with transparency over a region of your main frame buffer. So just something else to bear in mind. Just
update
It's not going to be very useful for us, but these are draw targets that I'm referring to. And there was actually a question in your Discord fairly recently about draw targets. So I made a note to mention them when we next did our stream. So if you could write the update function for me, please, and then a pair of brackets. You don't need anything in those brackets. It just does what it does.
Yep.
Now, if you run this, it will show that for 1/60th of 1 second.
Oh boy. Okay. We see if we can spot it.
Press plus as fast as you can.
Oh,
there you go.
Yep. Store it there for a sec.
So this is why we use a main loop, because when we say just show this on the screen, right? When a program is completed, it just returns back here to the code editor. So obviously, when it reads this program, and computers are unbelievably fast, it reads those instructions at a speed which is, quite frankly, incomprehensible to us.
Right.
And if you truly, really think about it, and the more you learn about how computers really, really work, the more ridiculous it gets. I mean, it's just, it's a miracle that any of this stuff even happens in the first place. It really is just something we take for granted. And it's practically just magic. So I like to show that it happens very, very quickly. It's 0.1, well, so it's just 1/60 seconds. I can't do that maths very well.
Pretty quick, I think we say in the business.
Pretty quick. Yeah. Safe to say. Yeah, it's safe to say it's fast. So what we're going to do is to say, right, once you've put that on the screen, just wait for a few seconds. And we use the sleep function to do this. So if you could put a sleep in there, and then maybe like 3 seconds or something.
Inside the brackets. And 3 seconds would just be a 3?
Just a number 3, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Let's give that a try.
Give it a try. Very nice. Okay.
Cool. So, right, so we've got that pretty much complete. So we're now showing a question. We're showing it for a few seconds. Sorry, we're showing it for a few seconds. We're giving them a chance to read it. And then we could move on to the rest of the program. Now, what we're doing here is we are just printing some words in a particular size, in a particular color, and waiting for a particular amount of time. And it has taken 6 lines of code to do that.
Yeah.
Right? It takes 6 instructions to do that. Let's say that we wanted to make a little introduction page to our quiz. So let's go above this onto line 1. And we're going to do the exact same thing, except I want you to write something like, welcome to Dom's quiz or something, just an introduction sort of thing. But we're going to need the same things because we want to clear what might have been on the screen before, set the text size to whatever new size you want.
Let's go 200 for that title screen.
Yep. Let's have a different color for the title screen.
Let's have another begins with B, ends with E. So we'll go straight blue here.
Oh my word! I couldn't even think of blue.
I also didn't realize until I saw the chat. We went to bronze and beige before blue.
That is funny.
And then so print. We need speech marks for this. Ooh. Oh right, because
so the reason it's done, it's a good thing that you've shown that there. It might look like a bit of a bug, but it's actually a feature. I promise. When you write a print statement, you can format the thing in the speech marks however you want. And when you print it, it will retain that formatting.
Wow, okay.
So if you wrote like, hello, I am Dom, and then left 3 lines of space and then wrote, I'm on stream with Dave, and then put close speech mark, close bracket, it would print that with all the spaces. And
nice.
So it's just a way of showing you that actually your entire text string, the string of characters that represents the thing inside the speech marks, your entire text string is this whole multi-line thing. Now, there is a slight bit of unpolishment, if I could just invent a word completely there, in that when you type, it sort of gets a bit confused as to what might be in the speech marks or not. So what I tend to do is I just put the second speech mark first, just close it off, and then close the brackets. And then I go back into the speech marks and finish that, because it's just, if I don't do that, I always forget to add it afterwards.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so let's say, And
Oh.
then oh, still there?
Yeah, I'm still here, I think.
So I need to keep moving through the rest of the lines, don't I?
Yeah, so update.
Yep.
And then we'll have that on screen for an amount of time as well. Maybe, the same amount of seconds or less, or whatever you want to do, really. Totally up to you.
Again.
Actually, if you do like something like, because I see this a lot in the workshops where the kids will put like 10, and it's like you actually don't realize how long 10 seconds is. It's a long time to wait for something to happen. So that looks good. If you could just put a line break in between those two.
Yep.
Awesome. Just to separate the sort of idea of what we're doing here. Right, so you can see there. Let's just check it works first. Let's always do that. So let's run the program. Hopefully it will work. Nice selection of text size there.
Thank you.
Cool. Excellent. Right, it works. Now, this is what I mean by doing it inefficiently first. Okay? We've got two things that are essentially exactly the same. Now, the content of what's happening is very different. We've got a different size, different color, different text. We might also have a different number of seconds to wait, right? But, like, for example, like you might have 5 in the second one or 4 or whatever. But the logic of what's happening is exactly the same in both examples. So when you spot a moment like this, because any time that we want to do something similar, for example, let's say we want to have a quiz with 20 questions in it, we are going to need at least 20 times 6 lines of code to do this. And very quickly, it's going to start to get, oh, really? I have to copy and paste all this. I have to type it all again. And you can. If you don't mind doing that, absolutely you can. But there's a way to save us some time. And that is to, like you said before, build a tool for this job.
Okay.
Which is creating our own function or creating our own node on, if you want to use GPG terms for it.
I had a little once we came back here and you were like, we've repeated this twice, we definitely don't need to. I did have a sort of light bulb moment. I put 2 and 2 together there, and I am very excited to see how this works, because that seems like that seems wild to me, the idea that we can I'm guessing we can kind of define those things that are happening, and then we're not having to type out 6 lines of code as you mentioned for each one of those where that's going to appear. Oh my goodness, Dave, I'm so excited.
Oh, good. I'm really happy, even though it's simple stuff, but it's so cool to learn it, because when you truly understand something, it's exciting. And this is what I always say in the workshops, like when the teachers are amazed that the kids are just like screaming with delight because they're watching a word appear on the screen in different colors. The reason why it's so fun is because they actually understand every line of code that's happening. And it's not just that they've just like kind of half understanding it and kind of just guessing at other stuff. Because they are fully engaged with it, it's just more fun. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to write our own function.
Okay.
But first, I'd like to point out that there are already lots of functions on the screen. All of these things we're seeing, right? All of these words with the brackets after them. These are all functions. And they are predefined functions that already exist in Fuse.
Right.
So when you call inc bisc, what it actually does is inc bisc is really just like a label, like a variable, for a set of instructions. And those instructions are far more, deeply coded. They're written in the language that Fuse itself is written in. And so it goes, okay, well, take whatever's in the brackets to this, which is a label for some numbers that represents the color bisc, and then use those numbers to adjust the text size global variable that exists like inside Fuse's architecture for the text size. So it's like, this is a list of instructions in itself, but we just call it the inc function, and it does this thing. So all we're doing is just creating one of these. We're just going to create a word that represents a list of instructions that can receive some information. So enough rambling on. What I'd like you to do is, if we go to let's just put it at the very top of the program, actually, because of the program flow of this, which makes some lines of text. That's great, yeah. And then online, wherever you like, we'll put the word function.
Yep.
And a space. And as you can see, it's a keyword, so it knows that you're about to define a function. And I like to call this something like my print, because it's our own printing function that we want to do special things. I mean, you could call it my print or quiz print or mega print or super mega, hyper mega, meta print. It's up to you.
And we need to do that in brackets?
No, actually, just put the word as it is, and then put some brackets at the end, just like a normal function does.
Okay, so let's call it...
defining what this will look like. So let's say, quiz print, right? And then put open close. Now, we're going to finish this function before we go back into those brackets, and you have the right intuition, but could you just go to the next line? Leave a line of space, actually. And I'm just going to talk about this last bit, because this bit isn't super obvious when I tell you to write this. It's going to sound a bit strange, but I want you to write 2 words, return and void. Return void.
Yeah, they don't mean anything to me right now, but I have full trust that once we get this bit done, it will all piece together.
It's kind of a trade-off, because I either show you a function that returns something, in which case the return void part is a lot more obvious, or we make a function that is very, very easy to grasp on why we would do it, which is like this printing one, which I really like to go with. But essentially, all functions return something to us. All of them return something to us, even if the thing it's returning to us we don't need and is totally useless.
Okay.
So sometimes functions will return a number. For example, there are some maths functions that will check particular things about certain types of numbers. Like maybe a good example actually is len, L-E-N, which can return to us the length of a string. So the Dom and Dave's quiz in the speech marks there, that has a certain number of characters, and we could put that whole bit of speech into this function, and it would return to us the number of letters and spaces in that thing.
Right.
So all functions return something to us. For example, text size 200 returns just a nothingness. It just returns a void value. It says, okay, I'm going to go and put this, I'll set the text size to whatever you want. And then here's that nothingness that you asked for. And that's what this part is. We're saying we don't need this function to give anything back to us. So please give us nothing. That's what we have to specify. Give us a void value. There are, perhaps there's more accessible ways to word all that, but at some point you sort of have to grapple with this returning part. It's not gonna be super easy to understand immediately, but when you see a couple more examples, you'll totally get it. Promise.
Gotcha.
So that's the skeleton of our function, and now I want to think about what this function needs to receive, because we know the instructions that we want this function to do. It needs to clear the screen, it needs to set the size, it needs to set the color, it needs to print some words, and then it needs to update the screen and then sleep for an amount of seconds. So what are the things we need to give this function? What do we need to pass this function for it to do its job in the way that we want it to do? The question I could put it this way as well. What is different between these 2 sets of 6 lines? What are the differences?
Well, right now there is 3 differences. There's the size, the color, and what's actually being printed.
Yes, yeah, and there could be another difference, which is the amount of time it waits. Right, so let's also add that on there. So those 4 things
make this
are the let's do that actually. Right, so we've got 4 differences. Those 4 things are what we call parameters for these instructions. So we need to pass our quiz print function these 4 parameters, but we need to give them names.
Okay.
Because we're defining how this function will look when we use it. This function quiz print bit isn't actually something that's executed as normal code. It doesn't just read it and do it. It will read it and do it when we use the function that we're defining. That will become more clear in a second. But for now, just put the cursor inside the quiz print brackets. And we need to give a name to each of these parameters. So we'll just do it in order. We could do size. We'll call that size. Put a comma after that and then a space. And then we need a color. So we'll just call that color. And then we'll put a space. Yeah. And then we'll put text. just some variables, and then maybe delay or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So we've got 4 parameters that have these names. Now, these names only exist inside this function.
Okay.
What we're doing is we're saying when we write quiz print, we also need to give it 4 things. And those 4 things are labeled as this.
Right. Okay.
And now we can use this information inside the function. So if you now go into our function, and we're going to press tab because we're inside, a separate block of scope here. So yeah, brilliant. And we're going to just write those same instructions again, but this time we're going to use our local function variables instead of the hard-coded values that we have.
So just to make sure I'm on the right track, instead of text size, we will be using size. Instead of ink, we'll be using color. Instead of print, we'll be using text. And instead of
not necessarily. Not instead of text size we'll use size, but instead of 200 we'll use size.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
The instructions will remain the same. So if you could just write out the instructions as we have them. So we'll do clear.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, I had it backwards.
And then there you go. Now we're taking whatever we put into the size parameter and we're putting it inside this text size function. So if you write size in here, and then on the next line, and then we'll have ink, and instead of blue, we're going to have color, or instead of bisque, we're going to have color. On the next line, we're going to have print, and instead of the actual words, we're going to have text. And then on the next line, we want to have update. And we don't need to pass the update function anything because it's just got nothing in the brackets. But then on the sleep, we're going to write delay in the brackets.
And I should have known really that it was going to be this way around because just like when we were doing variables, it sits within the brackets rather. Yeah.
Exactly. Sometimes I'm like using the terms that are a little bit complex, but I'm trying to gradually sort of drip these more complex terms in contexts that you understand more and more. So when I say local variables, I'm saying variables that only exist inside this function. If you go out of this function, right? So if you put the cursor above like the next clear, if you then said like text size here, it will not like it. It's going to say, I don't know what size is because you've not defined this word. Actually, size only exists inside our quiz print functions. Right. I like this comment from Arch in the chat. I think the ink bisque should be hard coded in. I would accept that. But for the sake of the explanation, we'll do that later. We'll do that as an optimization later.
Sure.
Because if we're going to put bisque every single time anyway, then we don't want to have to write it in every time. So it will be a true optimization. Anyway,
Dave, can I just run a question past you here? It may be that you decide that this is something to come back to, but I just want to bring it up when I've spotted it. Voxy says, can we indent and add line breaks in the parameters brackets when we'll call the function later to make it easier to read?
Ooh, good question. That one, I'm going to say, personally, no. But that's because that's just how I write code. Now, I shouldn't say it like that. That's conditional on how many parameters and on how long the function call is. Some programming IDEs, like some applications that you write code in, for example, like Visual Studio or things like this, they have settings for that as like an automatic formatting option. So it is absolutely a conventional thing, and Voxy's more than in the right to ask for that. It is, and we will show it actually. But personally, I like to have my function calls on one line unless they get into the ridiculous length. But yeah, I sort of do it on a conditional basis. If it's only like 3 parameters, then I think it actually looks a bit more confusing when we indent, but you'll see it, and then you can make the assessment, and then you can choose as well, Don. But that's a good question, Voxy. So,
and I think a great example of where we functionally can do that, and it's really about what your preferences and what your kind of own standards are around that.
Yes, yeah. And that's another good thing about Fuse, just to plug that, is that you can do it either way.
Yeah. Nice.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to make it super obvious why we do this sort of thing. So can you make a few more lines here? And just to give us some space. And then in the middle of all that, we're going to now write those 6 lines that we did before, but with 1 line using our quiz print function.
Oh,
so,
this rocks. Okay, yeah.
Quiz print. And then in brackets, 200, comma blue.
Wow.
Comma Dom and Dave's quiz in speech marks.
Oops. Sorry, not Dace.
That's it. Comma 4. And now you can delete those 6 lines. The way I would do that, by the way, Dom, is if you hold down ZR at the bottom or at the top of this, and then just use up to like select it all. So if you hold down ZR and then just press B once you've got it all selected.
Nice.
And that'll just get rid. There you go. Right. So now you can do the same thing with the next one. And every single time we use this function, we are saving 6 lines of code, which means it becomes exponentially more efficient and easy for us to manage. I mean, it's not actually more efficient, right? Like the code isn't going to have an easier time of running this because we've done this. It's not like it's now easier for the computer to execute this. It's not actually making it quote unquote better, but it does make it way better for us to read and to understand and to then work in this program later. And the quicker that you get your head around this concept and using this, the better it gets. Because when you start to see these opportunities in your program, and you think, oh, I could have a function to do this. And then you make that function and it works. It is so satisfying. Now, we've got a great example of an error here. And I think that we should actually run this just to show that error, and it makes something very, very apparent.
Okay.
So if you pause for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's saying incorrect number of parameters for this function. We found 3 parameters. And the function that you've used, QuizPrint, it wants 4 parameters. It wants size, color, text, and delay. But we only found 3, and the line is on line 12. So let's go and take a look at line 12. And using that information, can we spot what our error is?
Yeah, so I can see we're on line 12 now. And if I run through, we've got size of the text, we've got color of the text, we've got what's getting printed, and I didn't put the delay in there.
Absolutely right. So it found 3 parameters, which was an incorrect number of parameters for that quiz print function.
Perfect. A very handy error. Like very easy to work out what's going wrong there.
Once you've understood the concept, it is super, super helpful. And it's nice that it shows you, even though it's your own function, it shows you that function and it shows you the variables that you labeled. And so it's something that is easy to figure out. Dom, if you don't mind, I'm just going to take 1 minute.
Yeah, of course.
In that time, you can maybe think of another question to write.
Yes, I am also going to use this opportunity, if I am able to add a little ASCII face.
Oh yes. Oh, I will. Yes. So you know how to do that.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah. All right.
Actually, I will say, Dom. No, here's something that you can do if you want to get fancy. If you put slash and then asterisk, and then you see how that's now commented everything. If you make a line and then put asterisk slash, in between those lines, you can do whatever ASCII you want, and you don't have to keep using the double lines.
Hey,
okay, cool.
Thank you very much. All right,
I'll be right back in like 30 seconds.
Yep. All right, chat. Let's try and get a little ASCII face, and we'll try and get a new question for when we're back. So here's going to be our little function quiz print face. What would be a good quiz print face? I think maybe we need some big kind of milk bottle spectacles. We're gonna do inside a little head, some ears too. We'll make good ears. We can just use those. Yes, very nice. And I think I do want a little hat on here. So go for like a little. Maybe we can just go a little triangle hat, kind of a little quiz gnome. And I think we'll use this and some arms. See? You couldn't have a node on with limbs. So let's do the legs as well. Oh. There we go. I think if I do one more line, I'll even be able to get the tippy top of the wizard hat. Ooh. Hang on. My bad. Oh, chat. Okay, we're fine.
Oh, I
Wizard.
just got back.
Hey, nothing happened, Dave. It's fine. I definitely didn't break anything.
Dear.
Chat, wasn't I? I was doing great. Definitely didn't mess anything up.
What you did there, John, was you accidentally pressed, I think, either F6 or F4.
I did, yes. I was looking for my little top of my wizard hat here, and I accidentally pressed the F4, I think. Yeah.
That was trying to take you to the image editor tool, which was then going to say, oh, choose a project to open the image editor into, and see what images you wanted from that project. So if that happens, press escape, and you can just go back to code, and you're back in the code.
Nice. I did fail to make a new question, by the way, Dave. Oh, sorry. No. I think you were going to follow on from that last point.
I was going to say, just every time you exit the code editor, the game saves your code. So losing something is actually quite difficult in Fuse, unless it has like a crash while you are writing code, which is very, very rare. That will not happen. It will only really crash when it's doing something in your game that it maybe shouldn't be doing. But obviously it's saving all the time. And if it does crash, then so be it. But it's a very, very sturdy program. So yeah, I do like that quiver.
I was very productive.
That is amazing, actually, quite frankly.
It kind of started out as a gnome, but with chat's support, we have created the Quizzard, who will be presiding over Dom and Dave's quiz here.
Love it. He's brilliant.
I did fail to make a new question though, so I guess.
See. Right. Didn't do your homework.
Yeah, I know.
I'm going to answer a question in the chat while you do that. So, Dave, a few questions. What happens if you use sleep with no parameters? Can you assign parameters default values or make them optional? That's a very, very cool question. So you can't get super clever when it comes to the predefined function. So if you put sleep with no parameters, it will give you an error and it will say, incorrect number of parameters found 0 parameters. Some of the functions do have a default value, but that's just something that we kind of added at our discretion, like for instance clear, just to make the workshops really, really simple, especially for kids that are just starting, and to get it happening nice and quickly. For example, in ink, in the ink function, you can just put a number instead of a color, because we wanted to just demonstrate random colors super easily without having to create a random vector of 3 components of R, G, and B. So because it's something that you just kind of gets in the way when it comes to getting kids to just get results on the screen quickly in the workshops. But when you define your own function, you can use function overloads. So you could make a function called mySleep with no parameters, and then you could sleep for a default amount of time in there, and then you could make another function called mySleep, the same one, but this time you have one parameter, and depending on which one you call, if you put a parameter in there or not, it will know what you're doing, and it will go and find the right one for you. So you actually can do it with your own functions, but not all of them. Not all the default functions have default options. I hope that made sense. Lucian. How tall is the Quizzard's hat? Excellent.
I'm going for one here from chat, from Steve's Gaming.
Awesome. I love this. What I love is that our cat is all reputation with no justification for that reputation. He's only appeared on stream once, and he's just the most miserable cat ever. and he's super grumpy all the time, and he hates being picked up, and you can't stroke him anywhere except just in this one spot on his head where he actually likes being stroked. But he's an old man of a cat, right? And he's we see, Lucian, you say that's how cats are, but I've known a few cats that they're more like dogs than cats. It's amazing how different animals are. They've got such distinct personalities, and ours is a truly idiosyncratic cat. Right. So we have got our questions. What's going on here?
I was going to quickly draw your cat, but I realized that maybe we should focus on...
You keep going, because I'm getting a lesson in ASCII art right now.
This one might be a bit more challenging.
Oh, okay, that's difficult because of the spacing on the letters. Yeah. Wait, that's amazing, though.
That'll do. The epic cat, which I currently do not know the name of, but that would be a spoiler, I suppose.
Yeah. We'll find out when we do the answers part of this.
Okay, so we got ourselves 4 questions using our special quiz print function.
Yes.
And then they're all looking good, I think.
They are indeed. Now, for the answers part and the question part, what is there anything that you think we're going to need to use? Any concept that you think we're going to need to use to do this? What sort of thing that I'm hoping? Just so one of the key concepts from before.
Mm-hmm.
Which of those 3 is going to be the main sort of star of the show when it comes to a quiz program?
Is it going to be if statements?
Indeed.
Yes. Okay.
Well done. Why'd you say that? Why'd you say that?
Because we need to presumably provide an opportunity for the person participating in the quiz to answer. And there will be maybe a multiple choice question, and we'll have to know which one has been picked.
Excellent.
Is that right?
Exactly. So we're going perfect. We're going to compare whatever they say to the correct answer, and if it is the correct answer, we'll say great, and we'll celebrate them as an individual. And if they say anything else, we will berate them. So, and maybe we have different colors for that, and all sorts. Now, again, I'm going to use this chance to show you an inefficient way, and then we're going to drill it home even more with functions, and we'll end up creating another function for this.
All right.
So
nice.
What we'll do is we'll give ourselves some space. So actually, could you put a line? So put a line after Dom and Dave's quiz on so after line 17. We'll put a line there. So because that's like the beginning of our. So after that one. So yeah, perfect. Because that's like our introduction. Because it's not really a question in itself.
Right.
And then we've got our first question. So put a line after line 19. So we'll just split off the rest of the questions from our first question. Give ourselves another one as well, because we're going to be writing. This is all just me liking to do things very spaced out. But okay. So we need to use a function called input that allows the user to type something in. So it is a function. And this one might not be super obvious. So inside the brackets is we put something that we want to appear on the screen with the keyboard. So when Fuse reads input, it brings up the keyboard on the screen, and it lets you type something in like a little text box.
Cool.
Right? And on top of that text box, you can write something to show when that text box is active. So, for example, we could write the question here again to remind them of the question that they're answering. Right. So if we just put that, what is the best color? And I know it seems inefficient, but let's just run with it. We're
building up here.
We are building up. Now, this is a function that does return something to us. What do you think it might return to us?
Whatever's been typed.
Excellent, dude. Exactly. It returns whatever they've typed in as a string in speech marks. So that means we need to use a variable here in order to check that. So we're going to store the result of our input statement in a variable. We'll call it answer.
Okay, so I need to do
if
that
you
up.
No, if you do this at the beginning of line 20, you're just going to write answer equals at the beginning of that line. Yep. Right. So now we're taking the result of this function call, which is a piece of text, and then we're storing that in a variable called answer, and now we can check that. So on the next line,
should I put a space there? Would you put a space there, or would you go?
I personally always put spaces in between. I put a space on either side of that equals.
Ah, okay.
Personally, obviously, this is just one of those things where it's like, you know, some people just don't, and that there is no good answer to the question. For me personally, I find things easier to read when it's more spaced out.
Sure.
Other people find it easier to read when it's very compacted. And I've spoke to enough people who are on both sides of that fence to sort of say any, you know, confidence that you should do something. But I always are on the side of spaces. This is just how my brain works. So
gotcha.
We'll do that. Right. So what is the best color? Now we need to use an if statement. We want to say if answer. Now we need to use double equals here because this is an operator, just like multiply, just like, you know, subtract. This is an operator. It acts on something. Equals equals compares something to something else.
Believe we did. Oh, sorry.
We did.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Last time, didn't we?
We did indeed.
I can't remember the specific usage then, but
Me neither. I was struggling as well. I was like,
but yeah, I definitely do remember we put two equals together because I think it was the first time I'd ever really either consciously come across it or ever come across it. So yeah.
So equals equals means exactly the same as if it is this. If you, instead of the first equals, if you put an exclamation mark, that would be not the same as. Yeah.
Gotcha.
If you put greater than or equals, then it means greater than equals, less than, right? So it's all the same sort of operator. Equals equals is just like one of those things, if it is the same as. So now we need to put the correct answer here.
Okay.
Which is going to be in speech marks. So what is the best color? Obviously, the objective answer to this question. Exactly. And then we'll put a speech mark there. Brilliant. And then we need then for the end of this. Excellent. And then on the next line, we can indent. And what we'll do is we'll use our quiz print actually here. So if we do quiz print, we can say something like maybe like in a smaller size, yeah, like not super massive size. Yeah, and maybe we use like lime for this because it's correct. We'll use like nice bright green to say correct. We'll say correct. And then we'll do that for like 1 or 2 seconds, so it doesn't need to be on screen for very long. Close that off, and then we're going to use our else keyword. So on this one, you're going to go back to the beginning of the line because we're sort of separating out the different instructions that are part of this if statement. So next line, and again, this all could be written in one line if you wanted it to, but we're going to write it like this. This is sort of the convention. So on the next line, if you tab in again, and we'll do quiz print 80 red incorrect for 2 seconds. And then close it off, and then we need end if.
Within the indentation here.
No, this is at the beginning of the line, just like else, because it's like this is sort of that's the skeleton of our if statement, and then once it's over, we're returning back to the normal indentation level. So it's like it's like a marker to show, okay, now we're returning back to the normal program indentation.
We've taken a little detour on the road, and we're returning back to the
exactly. The
motorway or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, these questions, they actually do have more technical answers, which goes into something called scope, but I'm not going to really go into that. I think it's just unnecessary information for us right now, but you can look this sort of thing up. If you want to look up program scope, that is, it's a very, very deep subject, but I just don't find it super necessary at this point in the journey. We can definitely go into it, or if you want me to expand on it, I'm happy to, but I don't want to, sort of get things into the weeds too much.
Might be one of those things for folks to search who are, far and away higher level than I am currently.
Yeah, I think because there are certain things where, because computers at the end of the day, they become so unbelievably complicated the more you go down, right? And they get more and more and more complicated until you reach the bare metal of ones and zeros. And at that point, actually, yeah, it's quite simple because it's just ones and zeros. But to make that all work, there are layers of complexity that are just mind-boggling. And where we're working here in this sort of abstract code world is actually very, very high up to the close to the surface of the water, if you like. And every single aspect can go all the way down. Everything has foundations at the bottom. So we could go into any of these questions, like what is an if statement, and we could go all the way down to the ones and zeros. But to do that would just destroy understanding at this stage. At least that's what I think. Unless that is, because I mean, I'm speaking in generalities. Certainly, it was this case for me, and it tends to be the case for people that are new to it. But there are some people that have that sort of inclination towards the very, very complex bare metal stuff. That if you are inclined towards that and you find it nothing but interesting, go for it.
Yeah.
Absolutely go for it. But we're just going to be here all night otherwise. Okay, right. We've got our completed question. Okay. We might also want to have something else here. Do you think of anything else? Like when they get the question right, we might want to do something.
We could have a little sound effect, or we could have a. Is there something more immediate, more visual you're thinking of?
I was thinking something really basic, like mechanical. Like in a quiz, if you get the question right.
Oh, a score.
A score.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking. So this could be like a global variable, a variable that is just at the top of our program that we want to keep, access to for the whole time. So we could have that.
Would that go above our function here or below?
Let's just do it below just to keep our program spacing all the same. I mean, the function is like a separate little thing anyway, so we can have something here, and that function being there won't impinge on it. We don't want this to be a function. This can just be just the word score, and then equals 0, because obviously we're starting at 0.
Yep.
And so now we can use that variable all throughout our program, and we'll use it after line 24, just before the else. If we make a line and say score plus equals 1, I mean, it could be before, it could be after, it makes no difference, really. And yeah, probably indent on this one as well, just to keep the formatting consistent, because these two things are going to happen if that answer equals bisque. And if it's not, we'll do the other thing.
So we're gonna want to increment that score up.
Yes, correct. And we can do that either by saying score equals score plus 1, or we can just say score plus equals 1. It's a shorthand way of doing it.
Remember, we covered that as well. Yeah, I wouldn't have remembered the exact formatting there, but yeah.
Yeah,
shorthand for what we typed out previously.
Exactly. It's just really handy if you've got a very long variable name, because you don't have to write it twice. You can just increment this variable, and let's put the spaces in there as well, Dom. Just to,
let's keep it consistent.
But you want to do this, right? The convention is to put, go on. That's it, because plus equals is its own little thing.
Yeah,
it's its own little marker. Okay, right, brilliant. Now, that's one question. So, if we had 3 questions, do you see where I'm going with this?
Oh yeah, I see where you're going, Dave.
Right, we're going to have to do this 3 times.
Yeah.
The whole thing, again and again, which is getting back into I want to basically create a little seed in your mind that goes, hang on, I'm writing the same thing again here. The words are different, and maybe, something else is different, like the answer is different.
Yeah.
The question is different, but the logic is the same. And so I need to pass those differences to a function. And we could make a question function that does all of this for us, and it's going to make this way easier to write.
Very nice.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
could I ask you a quick question?
Yes, you can indeed. Yeah, beg your pardon.
No. I just wanted to ask, this is a little bit less about the specifics of what we're doing here, and more a question for you, because I'm curious, and I guess chat would be too. When you're writing something, not going at the speed that we're going at here, you know, but when you're kind of doing your own thing, do you tend to write something out like we just have and then turn it into a function? Or are you able to see far enough ahead in what you're building that you know that it's going to need to be a function and start there? Because to me, doing it like this was super helpful, and now I can immediately visualize what we will be doing next in the function.
So the answer is both. And I love that question. If I could just high five you for that question. It's such a great question because it is part of the process, right? I really remember learning to code because I've been doing this for, you know, about 9 years or so. But I really do remember what it was like to have like no idea about this. And there's a plane just going overhead over my house, so I do apologize if you've got some really loud plane noise there, but it was super loud for me, so I'll say that again. So right, it's always both. So when you begin, you have to do it this way. You cannot possibly see that far ahead, and so you have to do it the long way, which is why I think it's so important to do it this way. I'm not going to start you off by writing the function, because that's just going to make it be really confusing later when you think, oh, should I do a function for this? Shouldn't I? When do I do a function? When do I not? What you should do is always write it at the level that you can write it. And then, as you get better, you will start to see these things crop up, and you'll think, hang on, I've written that 5 times now. Is there a way I can do that with a function? And just having that thought process, that is the thing that you are training. Like if you're strength training, right, that's the lifting of the weight that is actually stretching those muscles, because then later you'll be able to go, I want this program to do this and this. Oh, I could use a function for that. And you'll just write it in the generic sense first. And so the answer to your question is, me personally, now I tend to most of the time write functions first.
Gotcha.
So if I think of a program I want to write, I will think of the tasks it needs to do as generic tasks. And this just tends to be the way that you go as a programmer. You'll think like, okay, I want to do this and this, but I should be able to do it just in case, you know, like maybe I want it to do this number or this number instead, and I want it to have this many sides or this. So I don't want to write it all really specific. I'm going to write it nice and general as a function to do it for any amount of things, anywhere I want on screen or whatever. And then you use those tools later to build your program. So that's kind of how I feel about functions. You're like creating a tool for yourself to use. But to be able to actually see that tool, you have to try and do the job on your own first. So it's a great question. And I hope the answer makes sense, because it's always both. You're going to start out not doing it. Then you're going to realize that it's an option. Then you're going to be really, really confused because you don't know when or why you should reach for a function. So you're going to make functions when you shouldn't, and you're going to not make functions when you should. And then eventually, suddenly, something just clicks, and you can do it. And now I do it just again and again. Like I'll make a really cool function for something and think, oh wow, I'm so good. And then later, like someone will look at my code and go, hey, why are you doing all that like this? You could just use a function for this. And I'll go, you know what? I'm back to square one. So it's a constant sort of spiraling journey that you go on. But yeah, I love that question anyway.
Well, really, really lovely answer as well. I think when you said, you know, work at the level that you're at, and the idea that that's something that, you know, you keep working at that level and you're building up those skills, and before you know it, you'll be doing kind of more and more of that shorthand. And I did see a couple of folks in chat, I think Lucian and Chalupa, mentioning the concept of shaving. That's something that comes up a lot when we're working in GBG. The idea that you make something, it doesn't matter necessarily whether it's super efficient, but you just kind of check that you can actually get it working. And because the node on limit is so harsh, you very often have to go back in and really, really think smartly about how you could optimize that further. So kind of the idea of building it like this, as we've done here, and then the equivalent of shaving, node on shaving there to get the function to do the same thing.
See, it's an interesting point actually, because it is just true. Like there's an adage that limitation breeds creativity. And that is an absolutely correct statement. Obviously, but it's a balance, because if you have too much limitation, then well, how much creativity can you really expend? Like if it's just like, okay, you get like 10 nodons, like, okay, like I'm sure that there are some amazing people who could make some amazing stuff. But what I like about that in GBG, what's quite interesting about that I hadn't considered, is that it's kind of fostering that mindset of optimization in a very accessible way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like you only have a set number of these things to use, and so it's getting like, if you're a kid and you're learning Game Builder Garage, and you come up against that roadblock because you've maybe used functions inefficiently, nodons inefficiently, then just making you think, how could I do this same thing in less?
Yeah.
That is a really good and very accessible introduction to the idea of optimization. And because the more powerful you get with your application, like for example, if you're writing a piece of code in C on a PC that has some computing power, you can kind of get away with writing ridiculously inefficient code because it's so fast and so ridiculously powerful that it's not going to matter, you know?
Yeah.
You can do something like 60,000 times, like in a loop or whatever, before it really starts to even begin to be a problem or something. And it's like, so if it's too powerful, the creativity isn't really that important, but you still want to, because this is the thing with like modern games, they are doing so much that actually the optimization is superly important, because even though they're so powerful and they can do these hundreds of thousands of things and draw hundreds of thousands of tiny triangles everywhere, you still have to think about the optimizations, because the scale of these things is always growing right up to the edge of what we're capable of, technologically speaking.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing. Like we're always just sort of pushing that limit constantly. But at the very bottom level, like where we're just writing simple programs, it's not really something we have to worry about too much anyway. Yeah, that's a really interesting topic. I really like that.
Thank you for explaining it.
I'd like to call another piece of attention to. So PB left a comment saying, if a piece of code has a single purpose, it's nice to call a function for it where the name describes that purpose, even if you only call it once. And I really agree with this, because I've tried to be very sort of obvious in the, it's the time to think, should I use a function for this, is when you are doing something like again and again, like a lot. And if you're just doing something once, you don't really need a function for it, right? You could just write it, hard code it, just do it blind. But it's very, very readable. Like if you wanted like a function to just print a title, right? You could just have a function to say, right, function print title, and that's all it does. You only call it once, but when you look through the code, you don't need to think, oh, quiz print 200 blue. Oh yeah, that's the title.
Yeah.
You just see print title.
Yeah.
That's very, very helpful.
That's really handy. I hadn't even considered that it's not always about just kind of cutting down the number of lines. It can be about readability especially if you're going back to something after being away from it for a while.
I mean, I that's, to be honest, that's actually the way that you really try and like we will get back to the code at some point. I promise, but this is all really, really great.
It's important stuff to cover. Yeah.
That's actually the way that you sort of become proficient at anything. Like when I was trying to find all these different analogies. So I play the guitar, right? And in the learning of certain things, like I play jazz guitar, and there's a few things that you have to, like, very, very difficult things to try and like acquire in your fingers, to use in like improvisation. So when you're improvising over some chord changes, and you want to make a really like nice sort of creative sounding melody, you don't want to overuse the same technique again and again and again, because it'll sound really, really repetitive. But in order to actually get that technique acquired in your hand, you have to overuse it. And when you overuse it, that's like creating this mechanism in your mind to say, use a function or use this technique. And then you can later on, once you've got that in your head, you can then go back and say, well, do I really need to? And then you can start to discern. But you have to overcompensate first. Yeah. That's always very helpful. Overcompensate first, and then, sort of prune it back. It's very helpful. So if you're wondering, should I make a function? Shouldn't I? Just do it. Just err on the side of making a function to do it. Even if your program is just full of functions that are only called once, next time you'll think, I don't really need to use one here, and you'll actually be correct, and you'll have a better, a more accurate idea of it. Okay. Right.
Thank you very much, Dave, on that point, because I think it actually ties back into what we were talking about previously, where sometimes you need to do stuff wrong. I'm going to use air quotes around that.
Yes.
In order to really understand the pros, the cons, the reasons why. And I think that's especially true when it comes to learning new things as well. You do need to get that kind of muscle memory in there, and sometimes that does mean overusing it. But it's part of the process of knowing when to deploy that, I suppose.
That's exactly right. Yeah, you summed it up very, very well there. That's perfect. Yeah, knowing when to deploy it. I like the use of that word. It's a great word. Okay, so you've preemptively written the word function there because you want to write this next function. So let's call this question.
Okay.
We're going to make this asking a question. Now, what does our question need? What does it need? What are the differences? Yeah, so pair of brackets. For the syntax, yeah, no problem.
Yep. Or syntax, yes.
So in our little block of code that's asking the question.
Yeah.
What are the things that we actually need to pass to this function? Because there's not many. What is the difference between each question that we ask?
Just the answer.
The answer, yes, but also the question itself.
The size, the color, and the weight.
I suppose we could actually have those. I mean, we really could. But I was just thinking, just the question and the answer, because we need to tell it which question we want to ask. So, what is the best color, or what is the name of Dave's epic cat?
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
And the correct answer to that question. So we'll just do two things. We'll label them as Q and A. So we'll just do Q, comma A. And then we'll do close bracket. Now, yes, I'm using very, very short variable names here. Maybe that's not the best practice, but just for the sake of getting it, done nice and quickly, we don't want to use question because we've already got a function called question. We could call the function ask question or do question.
Yeah.
It's actually, let's do that, Dom. Let's do that. Could we call it do question?
Yep.
Or ask question? Whatever you want to do. Yeah.
What, quiz question?
Yeah, quiz question. I like it. And then also, I'm going to get you to do something called camel case here.
Okay.
Can you put a capital Q for question, please? Yep. Cool. So that just makes it easier to read when we have multiple words as part of a variable.
Should I do it to print as well?
Yeah, definitely should, if we're being consistent. Now, you could then go and correct it on all the others. Fuse actually doesn't care because it's not case sensitive, but for the sake of consistency, it's very nice to do so.
And for ease of us, finding it and reading it.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Now, we are actually going to delete that bit in a bit, so we don't really need to change it there, but it's all good. It's only some P's at the end of the day. What's a few P's between friends, really? Okay. Right, so down back to our quiz question, and then we'll change our variables to question and answer, because it will make it much more readable. Chalupa Joe, my programming professor, also does one-letter variables too. I've found that the really, really, quote-unquote, good, very, very accomplished programmers, they throw around single-letter variables like they're just, sweets. Like, they'll just have single-letter variables for arrays and then all sorts of things. Oh, PB, that's very true. We could have used the find and replace feature. That would have been the perfect opportunity for find and replace. But maybe we'll find another opportunity later. Okay, let's put the return void in there as well, because we don't need this question to this quiz question function to actually return anything to us. We could later on, but just for now, we'll just do just as it is. Okay, now we need to. I think what we'll do here is if we scroll down to our question, can we highlight that whole thing up to end if? That's it. And then if you press X, right, and then we're going to go up to return into our function, and but not highlighting. So let go of that, and then inside the function quiz question, ZR and then A. Okay. So we'll put that in there. And then we can, if you get rid of the extra space, just to clean it up, and then we'll put our tabs in just to make it nice and neat. And because we do things properly. So tab there, and then, yeah, that's it. And then what we'll do after this is we'll just go down. And so you do want to tab in the if, and then the quiz print will be tabbed in again. So everything is going to be tabbed once because this is all now, that's it. It's all now part of this function. It'll look a lot neater when we're done and immediately more readable.
Yeah.
You can see that that's all within that function. So in our what is the best color part, oh, I've just realized, Dom, that the color of each question is actually different because you've got bisque, blue, pink, and okay. Let's also pass the color into our quiz question function as well. So after answer, maybe do a comma and then color.
Yep.
And we can reuse the color variable because it's local at the minute to the other function. So we can freely use that as many times as we want. So that's really helpful. So now in the quiz print line, we're just going to replace all of our stuff. So bisque becomes color. And then what is the best color becomes question. And this is where it's really, really helpful because if you want to use that multiple, in fact, it doesn't even need the question, the speech marks here.
Yeah.
Because we're going to put that in ourselves. And then the same in the input function as well. That just becomes question. So we don't even have to type that twice ever again. That just is all done for us. And then bisque becomes answer.
Without quotations?
Without the quotations, that's it. And we're done.
Nice.
And now, if we want to write a question, if we come down past our quiz print, there, yep. Now let's write, instead of having our quiz print, we'll have quiz question, comma, and then whatever our question was, which I've now, oh, so not comma, I meant open bracket, I beg your pardon. Thank you for loyally following the instructions regardless, even though it's totally wrong. Well, yeah, so it was what is the best color?
Yeah.
And then close the speech mark, and then comma. And then we want to have bisque in speech marks. That's going to become our answer variable. And then we want to have a comma, and then I guess just bisque here because we want to write it in bisque.
Confusing, but yes.
I'm going to be a stickler and say put a lowercase b on that bit
100%.
because it's then consistent with the other colors. Right, that's now our entire question done.
Wow.
And that is how we will ask the rest of our questions. And it will do all of the printing for us. It will take that information and feed it into where it needs. And we could ask 20 questions with 20 lines instead of 120 odd lines. Super helpful. So how tall is the Quizzard's hat? This is where we get to decide the actual answers.
Well, I was going to say 2 lines because...
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And we need, I think it was pink here.
Yeah.
And then the last one is...
I like that Steve chose to put it as orange because the cat is a ginger cat.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, we'll make sure we keep that then.
And the name is Waffle.
Waffle.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Good old
As
waffle.
in a nice orange waffle. There you go. He's Waffle, but I have a separate name for him that only I call him, and that's Greaseman.
Greaseman.
Yeah, for some reason I called him that once. It stuck, and now he accepts that as a second name.
Yes.
So whenever I call him that, it just makes me happy to call him that. Okay,
Waffle
one last
Greaseman.
change we need to do. Oh dear. That's really made myself laugh. It's pathetic, really. So we now need to change quiz print to quiz question on those two lines.
Also, I'm going to change this just to 2 because I realize that it's quite challenging to ask the user here to
indeed.
So let's just do. This is not a great quiz for anyone other than viewers of this stream, I suppose. But first of all, who is the Quizzard and to what?
I just want to also call out to Red in the chat for appreciating the name Greaseman for a cat. I think so too. And Pizza Power 289, if you want to see pictures of the famous waffle, then maybe if you're a member of Dom's Discord, I can put one into the into the Fuse thread. You can see it there. Okay, so we now have a complete quiz, and you can imagine. I mean, this gets exponentially more efficient line-wise because every time we write that one line, right, a quiz question, we are not only saving all the lines of code with the if statement, the quiz print, but we're also saving 6 lines of code every time we do the quiz print line, which we call like 3 times in the question function. So it becomes exponential. So we now have a working quiz. At the end, we might want to print the score, for instance. We could print the score out of our maximum number of questions. We could get even more fancy, of course. Like there's I was going to say the proverb, there's many ways to skin the proverbial cat there, but there's obviously maybe
don't tell Greaseman.
No, we'll put hands over his ears for that bit. And so we could do all sorts with this at this point, Dom. But I really wanted to show you this as a very obvious way of like, this is how helpful functions can be. And the earlier that you get this into your mind, the better. The earlier that you start using functions, the more you feel like a pro, for one thing, because it feels super cool to make functions. And the better your programming journey will be, the easier it will be. So that was quite a while, but that has covered the first of the 2 concepts I wanted to talk about.
Okay. Very, very nice.
So how do you feel about all that, Dom? I hope you're not overwhelmed at this point.
No. I love functions. I think out of everything so far, and of course we needed to go through loops, variables, ifs, else, in order to get to this stage. The functions are really exciting to me. That's something that, I mean, maybe chat can point out something that I'm missing, but the idea of being able to make our own node-on in GBG, that contains a set of other
node-ons.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Would be incredible, and it's obviously something we don't have access to. So functions.
I imagine that would be very profound, actually. Like if you could take like 10 node-ons and make your own node-on for them, and then use that, and that would only count as 1.
Yeah.
That's that gets around a lot of limitations. And Pizza Power 289, like custom blocks in Scratch, yes, exactly. And this is just case in point. I'm so happy to hear that, because this is just Fuse doing what it's supposed to do. Like I said, we want to be a stepping stone between visual-based and text-based languages, and that is absolutely concrete evidence of that happening right in front of me, which is awesome. So thank you so much for that comment. That's great.
I did see EB4 mention that maybe we have a little bug in our code. So should we try and run and see whether we can figure it out through the error that we're going to get thrown?
Yes. I see it. Well spotted, PB. Okay. Well spotted.
Ooh.
I wonder, okay. If you run it, it's going to be very obvious. So, well, not necessarily. Let's do that. Let's run it. Yeah.
Okay,
it's going to happen when we ask a question. When we actually answer this question, we're going to get the error.
Okay. So, obviously, Bisque. Okay, nice.
And now, what?
Oh,
okay. Maybe it's not that I thought. Okay.
Did I try getting this wrong?
Oh, okay. It's not the problem I thought it was going to be, and that now makes sense to me. So now I feel silly, but okay. I was trying frantically to think. Okay, I've got to spot this error immediately. Okay, so we're going to get. We have got. Let's just scroll up, because we know that the problem has to be somewhere. Oh, okay. I can't believe we made this error.
Okay, hang on. Let me have a
I
look
thought
through.
that's so much more obvious than I thought. I thought it was to do with the score variable, but actually, no, it's not. I forgot something there. The problem here is very silly, and it's actually. So I'll tell you, it's impossible to get a question wrong,
Uh-huh.
and I wonder if you can see why that is. Which part of our code checks the answer?
This bit.
Yep. What does that say?
If answer is
So
compared to answer.
if answer is the same as the answer.
Oh, right.
So the problem is we are passing our function a variable called answer.
Mm-hmm.
And then we are replacing that with a variable called answer. And we're using, so this is, it's because we did a copy and paste here.
Mm-hmm.
When we copied and pasted, we had a variable called answer that was being used to store our input.
Right.
And so now we are replacing whatever the correct answer is. Like when we pass the variable bisc as an answer,
Mm-hmm.
that becomes the answer in our on line 17. But then we replace that answer with whatever they wrote. And we say, if whatever they wrote is the same as whatever they wrote. Right? So we cannot possibly get the question wrong. So all we need to do is we need to differentiate the answer that is correct and the answer that they've written. And we can do that by changing answer equals on line 19. If we put like A equals or ans equals or user answer, if you want to be really, really, long, like long-winded, let's make that a capital A, perfect. And then it now just becomes if answer equals user answer, or the other way around. Either way is fine. Very, very well spotted, PB.
Yeah,
excellent.
I guess one of the hazards potentially of copying and pasting, although obviously nice and speedy in the moment, you may end up on the kind of back end of that having to go back in and fix anything unexpected.
Yes, exactly. And that is why we deliberately made the bug, you see. That's why we did it, because it just makes it really nice and obvious that, you know, when you use copy and paste, it might be very helpful for you in the short term, but you're going to run into bugs, you know? And so thank you, PB, for ruining that for us.
Chat won't believe it, but that moment there took about 3 hours to rehearse, and PB just blew it, you know?
Yeah. Well, fine, you know, you put all this effort in. Oh, dear.
Nice. Okay, so we should be able to get it wrong now.
We should be able to. Yeah, let's test that. Let's get a question wrong. Let's like use some weird color that no one likes. Like I don't know, like green.
Oof.
I mean, who in their right mind? I love green.
Yeah.
Excellent. It's working.
Yep. And let's get the last one right, just to make sure that that's still working. There's no reason why it shouldn't, but hey, very nice.
Awesome. Right. So that is using functions in a very, very like nice and accessible way, I think.
Yeah.
In the context of a program that anyone can make, right? No matter how like new to coding you are, you just copy those two functions from this this stream, and you can go and write a quiz of like 100 questions. And this is what we usually get. We'll once you learn how to do one, and then you sort of just let people go at it and just say, right, you make as many questions you want, you can be as silly as you want, especially in like workshops. When it comes to kids, especially like primary school level, they absolutely love to test their friends on the things that they've learned about. So you'll get all sorts, and that's why I like this project so much. Is it's not like, right, today we're going to make this particular sprite move around the screen and do this. It's what do you like to write about? What do you like to think about? Test your understanding of your favorite thing. And so you get people making like game quizzes or like Harry Potter quizzes or like various different bits of media that they like. Or we've had some really, really cool ones. One of the coolest ones we saw was someone who made a quiz on phobias. Like
Whoa.
really obscure phobia names, like what is this strange name a
Wow.
phobia of, and that was great. So yeah, you get all sorts. It's a lot of fun to make this one, and then you can have a really cool bit at the end where you can like use if statements to check if the score is greater than or smaller than a certain amount. If the score is 0, then you can say, "Wow, you really need to learn more about this and that," or you can, if the score is the same as the maximum possible score, then wow, you're amazing, etc., etc.
Yeah. Really nice. I do love the, it's something that you can end up with a complete bit of code, and then it's really down to you to add your interests and add your things to this after the fact. And you can just grow exponentially, as you say. I can imagine it's very addictive to just keep adding questions to something like this. Once you set up your functions, it's so easy to add new questions that
Exactly, and it involves so little really like work after that.
Yeah.
And you just get to sort of be creative after that point, and this is why it's just so helpful to set up the functions. Like, think functions first if you can. Basically,
Yeah.
that's what I really want to instill here.
Now, Dave, maybe I'm either jumping too much ahead or taking us a bit off course here, so just let me know if that's the case. I won't mind if you say we'll come back to that. But I did just wonder, is there a way within our function that we could say, we could kind of set up in our function on line 32, what is the best color? We've got bisque. Could we have it so that we could say bisque with lowercase and it would still be correct? Or on how tall is the Quizzard's hat, we could have 2, lowercase t for 2, or 2 lines all be correct.
So this is a good question, Dom. And I'm going to shout out Steve as well, because he's mentioned that the answers are case sensitive. It's exactly right. Your intuition is right. If we wrote bisque with a lowercase b, that would come up as wrong.
Yeah.
Even though we would want to give that as correct to someone who tried their best and gave the best answer, like bisque. So you're exactly right. And we could, if we were doing this as separate if statements, as we were in the sort of inefficient method
before we were using our functions,
yes, then actually it would be kind of easier, because we could do exactly as Chalupa Joe is suggesting in the chat and use an or keyword in between the upper and lower case. So we could say if the answer equals bisque, capital B, or answer equals bisque, lowercase b, or answer equals whatever you want to put. And so, like, for the wizard one, you could say 2, or 2 with lowercase, or 2 lines. Now, we could have, like, for example, if we said we're going to allow 2 varieties of answer, just upper and lowercase, then we could add that as a parameter into our function. So we could actually add another parameter after the bisque there and put bisque lowercase and say, like, in our function, we've got answer and then answer 2. And we could say if user answer equals answer, or user answer equals answer 2.
Right.
But that's not very good, because that kind of limits us to only a certain number of answers, valid answers, right? And what I'd like to do is to have any number of valid answers that you could then add in yourself. And to do that, we will need to use the next concept that I wanted to talk about today. So it's perfect jumping off point, and I think the Arch in the chat has also preempted this very, very nicely. So we're going to need an array to do this. An array to do this. So before we do that, could you just swap me over to my screen?
Absolutely.
I can then use this as a little break to talk about arrays a little bit. And then we can take that understanding and
I'm going to very, very quickly step away from the stream for a moment, but I'll jump in when I come back. You just keep going, Dave. I'll just be one second.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so I will, in the meantime, chat, I will just, I'll do what Dom did, and I'll just mess around. I'll just draw a bunch of stuff. So maybe, what will I do? I'll do some ASCII art of, I haven't planned this. Well, How did you guys know exactly what to write before? That was so good. This looks kind of like a face. Maybe if we do this. Chili Joe. All right, Dave. Dom is gone. Time to unleash the Bisque virus on the channel. Okay, actually, let's just do that. Let's put this here, and then let's just do a clear. How about that? There we go. Okay. Sorry for asking it a lot, but do you think we'll have time to look at how to make a multiple choice quiz rather than freeform answers? Voxy, this is exactly what I wanted to look at next with the array side of things, because it will lean into that perfectly. Having an array for multiple answers will, as in like multiple valid answers, will also give us the perfect mechanism to have multiple choice, right? Multiple potential answers, as well as multiple valid ones. Okay, are you back, Dom?
I'm back, yep.
Can you read the word on the screen for me?
No.
That's correct. It is Bisque. It was just.
I should have known. Was that Bisque all over?
It was Bisque background, Bisque ink, and it said Bisque as well. When will Fuse get dark Bisque and light Bisque? That's a good question. I mean, we could go into some color stuff here. I mean, because Bisque is really, in fact, let me just demonstrate this just for the sake of just fun. If I print Bisque, what you will see here is the number. Okay, that's a big number because I've got text size 500. If we put a more reasonable number, like 80, right? You'll see these are the numbers that represent Bisque. So that is an amount of red, an amount of blue. And then the last number is how opaque we want that to be. So if we take that number and we multiply it by, say, 0.5, or we actually, because I don't want to make it more transparent. Let's take away 0.1 actually from each of the red, green, and blue. Then what we will see is a slightly darker Bisque because we're just reducing the amount of red, green, and blue, and you can kind of see it there. Right? You can kind of see that there in the top left.
Yeah.
We could do slightly more. I mean, when you realize that everything is just numbers, you know, you can play with these things.
You're making super Bisque.
That's right. You can make it even. You could do Bisque plus Bisque.
Whoa, that'll be very different, right?
Yeah, actually, it's just gonna be white because we're adding. Like when the values become 1, it's just going to be white. So we're just in the realms of ridiculousness here, right? Anyway,
Ischia.
I tried my hand at a face as well, but I don't have your ASCII skills.
I like it. It's a cat looking directly at us, breaking the fourth wall here, checking that our coding or our formatting is good.
Yes. There we go. We'll do that. Righty, so we're going to talk about arrays. We're going to talk about arrays. Now, an array is like a chest of drawers. I like to find simple examples in life that you already know about, like a loop is like a sandwich. An array is like a chest of drawers. And a chest of drawers that contains something in each drawer, and each drawer has a number. So we could put anything that we wanted into an array. It's like a variable, but it contains multiple things. For example, let's say we want to have an array of different colors that we want to I see PB. That's just really distracted me there in the chat. You could do bisque plus black divided by 2 for the average between. That's very, very clever indeed. And I think maybe we need to have a good discussion on the more advanced bisque applications and how to really use maths properly.
High
when it
level
comes to
bisque
altering bisque.
strats.
I love it. I mean, it's just so funny to me that your community has immediately uptaken this meme with such alarming efficiency. It makes me so happy, Tom, honestly. Okay, right. So let's say we want to have an array of different colors that we want to cycle through for different, print lines. So we get to really control what colors we go through. Because if we just do random colors, it's nice, but we have no control over it. So that's something that we could do, and it's a very easy application for an array. So to put it shortly, an array is a variable that holds multiple things. If we have color equals bisque, right, this is always just one thing. It's a variable that holds one color.
Mm-hmm.
But if we use square brackets, so this is where we find square brackets used.
Okay.
We can have a list of colors. Maybe we want bisque and sand and beige. Oops, that's not how you spell beige. And some other bisque-like colors. Let's have bronze in there as well. All these, so ridiculous. It's just so not colorful. It's just the opposite of colorful. But now it's kind of more appropriate to name this as colors because we are storing multiple things in here. Obviously, this is just convention. You don't have to do that. But we have multiple things in this chest of drawers, in this array. So we can access these by using something called an index. And the index is just a number that reflects which of these drawers we want. So we have 0 here, 1 here, 2 here, and 3 here. Right? And we could use any of these by just simply going ink, colors, and then we give it the index that we want in square brackets.
Uh-huh. Now,
if we put a 0 here, we get bisque. Go on, Dom.
I noticed that you commented the index there. You're not defining anything with the 0, 1, 2, 3. You're just using that as a label for us to better visualize this, right? It's automatically giving
that's exactly right.
0 to the first one through to 3.
That is correct. Yeah, it's a good question, actually. Yeah, it was just to illustrate that this is automatically what happens. All array indexes start at 0 in FUZE. So if your array is 2 million elements long, then it would begin at 0, and then it would go up to 2 million minus 1.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. No, it's super handy to have that little visual representation there, because immediately I understood what was happening. Thank you.
Good. No problem at all. So yeah, if we put a 2 here, we're going to get beige. If we put 3 here, then we're going to get bronze, right? And so we could then, let's have a print statement in here as well. We'll print, again with the colors, with the speech marks. We'll say, here is the text. And we'll just put a clear here like this. And let's also just set our text size so it's nice and visible. Right, and obviously it's in the color that we get. We could then obviously change this, and we're going to get different colors by just changing the index.
Very cool.
So let's say let's just have a bit more of a obvious changing series of colors. Let's use something like red and yellow and pink and green. Orange and what is it? Orange and purple and blue. Yeah,
yep, you got it. Yeah.
Lavender and azure for some fancy colors here. Okay, so we'll have a nice sort of rainbow sequence, and if we want to cycle through this, have any idea what we would do here? For example, like let's say we did this, like so. We're going to put another line here so we can go down the screen instead, like this.
Yeah.
Okay. And how do you think, Dom? You got any ideas? And obviously, no
Mhm.
pressure. How would we cycle through our colors here? What would
Now,
we need to cycle through the colors?
now my mind immediately went back to some of the things we did last week, but I think here actually what we could maybe do, if I'm following along correctly, is define more of the colors from the array. Right? Like we could, because we're currently just telling it to do 0, which is Ruby.
Right.
But is there some way that we can tell it to look at more of the colors from the array?
We could do this. We could do the hard-coded way, right? We could say, take that, do that, and change that to 1. This will maybe make the answer that I'm looking for a little bit more obvious to you. We could do this way. Right, and this is going to achieve our goal, right? This is going to do it.
Okay. I think I see where we're going then.
Right, that's working for us.
Also looks amazing.
It looks pretty cool.
Are we gonna have to use what we learned previously and get a little function going?
I mean, we absolutely could have a function to do this. I wasn't even thinking that, So you've got a step ahead there for me, which is awesome.
Is there something?
I've planted that seed.
Yeah. Is there something way more obvious that I'm missing?
It's just a bit more basic. Rather than using a function, all we need to change is this here.
Right.
The index.
Yeah.
So if this becomes a variable, like this.
Yeah.
And we use that here. All we need to do is take our index and add 1.
Right. Yeah. So when I said at the
oops, and we've got an error straight away. Why? This is
Ooh.
I shouldn't have said oops, actually. I meant to say, ooh, that's what I expected to happen.
Exactly as we planned. Which line was
it's a
the
really
error?
good error when talking about arrays. It happened very, very quickly. So it might not be super obvious. I'll tell you what I'll do. I will put a sleep here for half a second.
Which we know is a little bit of a wait. Yes,
and this is not a good thing to do inside a main loop, but only when you're doing like a game project. This is just, this is just for the sake of making this happen nice and slowly.
I think I know what happened.
Do you have a read of that error message?
Yep, so array index out of bounds, array size 7, index 7. So is what happened,
Yes.
we reached the end of our array here.
Yes.
Which would be 0 through to 7, right? And then it didn't know what to do.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Right.
So it got an array index of 7
because it
but
added
the
1
array
to 6.
Size is 7. That's it's a bit of a confusing thing. So the array size, there are 7 things in the array, but they go from 0 to 6.
Right.
So we cannot give it an array index of 7 because it will not like that. It's something that you have to bear in mind. The array size is the last index plus 1, or the index is the size of the last index is the array size minus 1, depending on which way you want to think about it. So we cannot give it a number that is greater than 6. And so how could we fix our program from erroring like this? What could we do here? We could say if our index becomes greater than 6,
then just reset it or
exactly reset it back to 0. We'll make our text size nice and small for this, so we can tell you what, we'll make it like 30. Then instead of saying here is the text, we'll put some dots like this. And then look quite nice. It'll go.
Oh yes.
In fact, let's get rid of our sleep here, and we'll take all those dots and we'll put them all again. There we go.
Hey, nice.
So now we're cycling through our colors. We've got our definite controlled colors. We have total control over all of them. We're cycling through an index, and we can reset it when it reaches the end.
That's very cool.
So these are the basics of an array. So multiple things in one name with an index to tell you which one that you're going to get and a way to access those different things. Now, of course, this is just using colors.
Yep.
So you can have anything in an array, anything at all. In fact, in Fuse, it's especially forgiving because normally in other programs, you have to have everything in an array be the same type of thing. So if I said, okay, here's all my colors, but then I want this last one to be the word Dave, right? It's going to say, hang on, you can't have that because the word Dave takes a different amount of data to store than a color. And so we can't put that in there. But Fuse doesn't care at all. It will let you have a name in there. It'll let you have a number in there. It will let you have an image that you've loaded in. It will let you have a sprite that you've put in here. You can have another array in here. You could have an array of colors in this one. You could have an array of words in this one, right? It doesn't, it's very, very, very forgiving. In fact, you could even have an array of multiple different types of things in there, right? So you could have all sorts of nonsense going on. But there's actually a better way to represent this as well that we could get into later. But just to show you how versatile and how sort of free it is. So that's the basics of arrays.
And we can also have more than one array?
Well, what do you mean?
I just mean you are putting all of those things inside this colors array right now, but let's say
correct.
You called that something else. I don't know.
Stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Instead of doing it that way, could we have a colors array and then also have a names array, which was add Dave, Dom,
100%.
Waffle. Yeah.
Right. We could have red, blue, green in our colors array. We could have an array of names here, like Dom, Dave, Waff. We could have some numbers that we like 103 and 71. And then we could actually make another array called like all the things. And we could make that an array of colors, names, and numbers.
Nice. Right. I think I like arrays and functions, Dave.
Yeah, they're cool, aren't they? We could have a function to go and get these things from the array. We could say function get something. And then into that, we could tell it the array of things that we want to go and get. We could say things and then an index. And we could say return things index. Like this.
Yeah.
And we could say, right, I want you to... So my... so this is getting ridiculous on the name. So thing equals get something. And the thing I want to get is in all the things. And the thing from that I want to get is this. And so if we say now print that thing, update the screen, and sleep for 3 seconds just so we can see it. I'll put the text size up here so we can see it on the screen like that. We'll put it at like 50 and it will give us the wrong thing. What have I done? What have I done wrong? Oh, why did I put that there? I meant to do this. Sorry.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah, so I gave it the index as part of the array and it actually wants it as a separate thing like this. Like this. So this is now saying, right, take our whole array, all the things, pass it into this thing called get something, give it an index, and then use that index to tell me which thing from the thing we've given it we want. And it will give us the array of color values. That's actually not the best option there. So let's do names instead because that was something that you can easily see on the screen there.
Which is one there. Yep.
David Waffle. Yeah,
very nice.
Exactly.
Okay, very, very cool.
I love this. The weirdest part is somehow I understand this. Chilipa Joe, that's awesome. That's awesome. I'm so glad because even though I've sort of just like snowballed you there with like very weird applications of array indexes and functions, they are, when you get these two concepts and you can sort of play with them like this, they're very, 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 very powerful. Lucian in the chat, mixing variable types in arrays feels horrible, but great that the freedom is there. Yes, I absolutely see why you'd say that. And if you're coming from a place of more, what's the word I'm looking for? More like a more professional background, then some of these things might just seem like, well, why would you do that? And the reason is to allow maximum freedom for people who don't necessarily, think in that way. But the cool thing is that obviously nothing is stopping you from doing it as strictly as you want. So yeah, it's kind of there for both people as well, for both types of people.
I really think that's
Lucian, good question. Sorry, Dom, I just cut you right off there.
No, not at all. I was just going to very quickly say I think that's a really great approach. It's a win for everybody basically, no matter what, no matter how you want to tackle it. The freedom is there.
Yes, absolutely. So he's asking, Lucian's asking, what about multi-dimensional arrays? And actually, I've already shown you one there, because a multi-dimensional array is just an array inside an array. That's what that means. So we could have an array of arrays, and technically this stuff array here, this all the things array, let's just get rid of stuff actually, because this is just a mess. So our things array, all the things, this is a multi-dimensional array because each of these is an array of 3 elements. So if we wanted, let's just ignore this part here. If we wanted to get a specific thing, a specific single thing from our all the things array, we could say all the things, and then we need to give it 2 indexes. We need to give it the index for the array that we want to access. So let's say we want the number 100. We need to say number 2 for the numbers array that is contained inside all the things. And remember, what I'm talking about here is this 0, 1, and 2. So we're getting the 2 there, and then we provide it with another index to say the number that we want to get. So that will give us the 0 element of the 3rd element, the 2 element in all the things. And so that will get us this right here. Right. So arrays can be multi-dimensional. Obviously, the more you layer them together, the more you are asking the computer to do when you ask for something from it. So it does get a little bit taxing. And so if you can represent things as separate arrays, this is actually much more efficient than this.
Yeah.
When we ask to go and get these things from here, if we're doing that a lot, I mean, to be honest, it's not a problem here at all because it's only like 9 objects. But if you've got like an array of 1,000 things inside an array of 1,000 arrays, and inside each of those, you know, like this array of 1,000 arrays with 1,000 things in is in an array of 500 things, suddenly you have a massive amount of work to do to go and find a particular thing. It's having to load a huge amount of data to access that. So if you can store things as nice and neat, simple arrays, then that's usually better to do that.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so that's a bit of a quick drag through the shallow, middle, and deep end of the pool when it comes to arrays there. Although I'd know we haven't really gone into the deep end, actually, to be fair. It gets far more complicated, of course, as all these things do. But what I'd like to do is to now swap back to yourself, and we're going to apply this concept to our quiz program.
Okie doke.
But before we do, I'm going to take another 30 seconds, if you don't mind, Dom.
Certainly, yeah.
Drank a lot of liquid during the stream.
Dave is away. Arch asked Zeroth, Zerust, Zerand, or Zerud. I'm gonna say Zereth position in the array. Arch. That's the one. That's the one that rolls off the tongue easiest. Guess I can also, and I can tweak my ASCII at the top here while we're waiting too. I'm not super happy with waffle up here. So maybe with waffle's head, little legs here. Oh, for that I'm not going to. There we go. Just 2. The ordinal for 0 is 0th, apparently. There we go. Thank you, Voxy. Waffle does have a little tail here. Maybe we could use a tilde tail
That's genius right there.
What's that, Dave?
That's just genius. The tilde. It's a tilde.
Also, I do think the Quizzard needs a wand, so I'm also going to find... There we go, there's the Quizzard's staff.
Amazing.
And Waffle now has
Absolutely
little legs. They are quite stumpy. I don't know whether that's accurate, but...
The resemblance is just uncanny. It really is. Yeah. Actually, quickly, Dom, if you don't mind, could you just swap back to my screen, because
yeah,
as
absolutely.
I was just in the room, I had a thought with Lucian's question. There was another point I wanted to add, because I didn't want to seem like I sort of brushed it off, because the question of multidimensional arrays. So technically, yes, like absolutely, this is a multidimensional array, an array of arrays. But I think that the way that Lucian was thinking about it might be something more like this, and I just want to make sure that this is also very clear.
Okie doke.
So let's say we wanted to represent something like a maze as an array. We could represent that as an array where each element is a series of ones and zeros, something like this, right? And I'm going to format it in this vertical way, because it becomes immediately clearer to see how this is, being represented abstractly. Like when we access it, we want to access it treating it like rows of columns rather than just sort of an array of arrays. Really, we're thinking about it as walls and empty space. So obviously, this is an incredibly simple maze, but let's say we had something like that, where we might spawn in this 0 here, and we are going to walk up to this place, and then over here, and then come down here. Now, we could actually use these numbers to look up different tiles from a tile sheet to draw, particular tiles, like maybe brick tiles on the ones and like floor tiles on the zeros. And then we could go and access this data in the code to sort of check where we are in the array and use it for collision and all sorts. So I think that when Lucian mentioned multidimensional arrays, because this only just occurred to me then when I left the room, and I thought, that's a very, very important way of representing these things. And I didn't really cover it by just saying we already have an array of arrays with all the things. So it's just another... I mean, we will come to this. I mean, and I'm hoping that you're getting faint whiffs of Mouse's cheese maze coming through.
Yeah, it's suddenly gotten a little, fragrant in here. It's, but yeah, thank you very much for clarifying that aspect of it too.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Okay, so let's swap back to yourself, and let's set up an array. Let's set up an array or two, actually. So
right.
You can do this after the functions, because they're sort of our little, the tools that we're going to use for our answers there. And
do you mind that I've separated out the score there, or should that stay?
No, that's fine.
Yep.
That's fine. I want to put just two slashes here, and just put global variables as our little title, and then after the score you could put another couple of lines, and then maybe a couple of slashes, and we can put like quiz, just so we know like where the program is starting and where our global variables are. And so this part is going to be in our global variables. In fact, no, we'll do this part first.
Okay.
Hang on, I'm trying to think. Which way do we want to... I think we've done quite a lot of the inefficient part first. And in the interest in getting as much as we can into the stream, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. So what we're going to do is to create an array that stores all of the questions and all of the answers for our entire quiz. And then our entire quiz is going to become 3 lines of code.
Wow. Okay.
No matter how many questions we have, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
Yeah. But obviously that's not including the array of stuff.
Right.
So before or after score really doesn't matter. let's make a variable called quiz data. Ooh.
Oh.
I like how you immediately wrote variable there, because
we've been doing
you
our functions.
Exactly, yeah. So you're already what's the word I'm looking for? Like, that's actually something that you kind of have to do in more advanced languages. You have to say the type of thing you're making all the time.
Okay.
Whether you're making a function or a variable, you have to say like, oh, this is going to be an integer variable or a string variable or an array of these things. So yeah, so you're already growing past your boots there.
Unknowingly, I should say.
Unknowingly, yeah. So quiz data equals, now we're going to put open and close square brackets here. So that just gives us like our whole array here. And then if you press enter a couple of times just to give us some space, so we're going to space this out nice and vertically, and then put a line after the closed bracket so we have a separate, that's it. I'll tell you what, actually let's backspace, because we only need one spare line and we'll make them as we go. So now in line 32, if you could tab in, and we're going to have another pair of square brackets here.
Okay.
Right, and now inside these we're going to have some elements. We're going to have the question, we're going to have the answers, we could even have the multiple choice answers if we wanted to, but we'll just start with the question and the answers.
Okay.
Right, so let's first of all write the name of our question. So we might want to do a copy and paste here, or we might want to just write it out. It's totally up to you, dude.
I guess if I can do this, then I'll be able to see them. So
yeah, sure.
Quotations around?
Yes, we do want quotations. Yeah, it's what sort of defines this whole thing. So what is the best color? Put our question mark. Great. And now the next element of this array is going to be an array. So put open and close square brackets. And in this array, we're going to put all of the possible answers that you want to accept for this question. So we'll have bisque in with a capital, but with our question, that's it. Speech marks, and then lowercase bisque.
And I guess if we were being very, very generous, we could have like bisque spelled incorrectly.
I mean, the question then becomes like, how many incorrect ways
spellings,
you want to allow it? Yeah, we could do all sorts here. I mean, to be honest, we could even write code that would convert their answer into an entirely lowercase thing, so we don't even need to separate these.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't want to get into all of that right now, especially because this allows us to write, like, we could even put like it's bisque as a possible answer, you know.
Yeah.
So you can have all sorts of different answers, but I think we only need two for this one.
Yeah.
And so you see how we're having to use a comma to separate every element of what's inside an array? Because this entire question on line 32, including the square brackets, this is itself an element in our quiz data array. We need to actually put a comma at the very end. So after the second square bracket.
The second one. Right.
Yes, because the next one is going to be the same sort of thing.
Yep, gotcha. Yeah.
We only don't want to comment on the last one, but I would recommend putting a line space before you do this one. So after the comma, before the square brackets, and then backspace there. So that's it.
Yeah.
And now we've got a really nice list of our questions.
Cool. So it's just a case of, while I'm doing this, if there's any questions that have come up. That,
sure thing. Yes, absolutely. I can do this. So let's have a go. Let's just have a look back, because I think I've missed a couple. Cheese maze. Chalupa Joe saw it coming a mile off with the cheese maze. Right, maze coordinates and such from Lucian. Great. I'm very, very glad that I intuited that. A more abstract array was what I was thinking. Brilliant. I'm glad then. I think maybe I psychically detected what you were thinking then as soon as I left the room. Mousie's ASCII maze. There's so much to cover with arrays. It's so true, because actually arrays are probably the most versatile concept. In fact, just to say a general thing, from what I've learned, my journey of coding has essentially been learning more and more clever ways to create arrays of the things I want. Data is everything when it comes to programming. Like if you can arrange your data in a very clever way, like how we're doing here, you can optimize your code hugely. And this then allows you, it's not even just about like really, really wanting to shave off lines and worrying about how much processing. It's about just how do you like make something of decent sophistication in a way that is easy for you to manage later on. And having good data setup is the key to that. A random silly question: if you had to write global variables, will you write global in all caps? I know it's just a comment. Bori ES or Boris. I see. Everybody's syntax idiosyncrasies are coming out in full force here. These things, they really do feel very personal when you get into it. And it's like, I really love to see spaces in between stuff. And that also means that if I don't see the spaces, I'm kind of physically hurt. And so I totally understand why you might want to see certain things. We'll leave that one up to Dom. I think because global does tend to be in all caps. It's a convention thing. Okay, sure thing. It is a convention thing. Is there a difference with using the var keyword or not? So Arch, I'll quickly answer this and without going into too much detail, Fuse actually doesn't care about variable types. It will allow you to freely redefine variables to be a different type. So I could say int number equals 10, and then on the next line I could say number equals Dave in speech marks, and it does not care. The reason why we use it in Fuse is to predefine certain values. So when you do int num, it will automatically assign a 0. If you do string name, it will automatically assign empty speech marks. And if you do var, it will automatically assign a void value. So that's why you might use var. It's actually just to add a type to sort of cover all of our bases, because there are certain things returned by functions that if you later on in your program wanted something to store a function return of one of these sort of specific types, then you might set it up with a var keyword. I hope that answers your question. And Greaseman should be a correct answer. Oh, brilliant.
Dave, I actually have a question of my own here.
Awesome.
So for what is Dave's epic cat called, we now have 4 in our array. Waffle, capital, lowercase. Greaseman, capital, lowercase. And it's gone off the page for the first time. And I know I could just decrease the size of the text display, but is there a convention for how I would like line break here?
Oh, I love that question, Tom. You know exactly this is the sort of question that just makes me happy inside. Okay, yeah, there is. So what we're going to do is sort of split things off into a more vertical way, but we're going to do it on all of our lines.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go to line 32 at the beginning of the what is the best color part. And you're going to press enter on that one. So after the bracket there. So if you get rid of the blank line, that's it. And do that there. And then press tab because you're inside this bit here. Right now, press an enter before the square bracket of bisque and bisque.
Yep.
That's it. And then go to the end of this one, and before the last square bracket, press enter, and then backspace.
Right. Gotcha.
Right. So we're separating the elements again vertically. Now, if bisque and bisque had like 10 things in it, then you might want to do that vertically as well in the same way.
Gotcha. Okay.
So do the same thing on this one. So it's all just about, just sort of keeping it nice and neat. But I tend to really like this vertical sort of layout. This is very much something that different people like different methods for. The boss of Fuse, John, he really likes to use as compact space as possible because he likes to write a lot of code in the handheld mode. And like using the touch keyboard, and so he likes to keep as much as he can on screen as possible. And I think because John is from the generation that learned to code on the original machines when things just looked very, very different. And it was actually very helpful to have a lot of code on screen, very, very, sort of tightly compacted together. And that was more conventional. So that just looks sort of neater to him.
Yep.
And so it is just one of those things. Personally, I love that layout that you've got right there.
Okay.
That just makes me really happy. In fact, I would go even one step further and I would go on to line 32.
32, yep.
And I would go after the square bracket, I'd put double slash, so comment, and I would write question 1 here with a capital Q.
Yep.
Right? That's exactly what I would do.
Okay.
And then I'd do the same thing on line 36.
Right.
So that anyone having a look at this, they can just see, bam, here's all the quiz data. And then you could do the same thing. You could do like after bisc and bisc, you could put / answers or correct answers. Or, I mean, this is just, you could go to your, you could sort of like, you can get as organizationally intense as you want to here.
Yeah.
It really is up to you. But yeah, obviously.
Let's say that's a nice middle ground there. We've got
sure. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Got our spacing and everything. Cool. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's really nice and helpful. So you can just have a quick look and see exactly what's going on, and then you can see that our quiz data ends on line 44 because that then returns to the original indentation level. So you can just have at a glance see what's going on. Right, so now we've got this quiz data, we need to adapt our code to expect this data layout. And so we're going to use a special type of loop to do this.
Ooh, okay.
Okay, now, could you swap back to my screen briefly?
Absolutely.
Cool. What we're going to do is we'll make our colors again, actually. Let me just undo everything I did there. We'll make our colors again. We don't even need this index part. We'll get rid of this. We're going to get rid of this. Arch is seeing it coming already. That's awesome. And so you remember how like we had to have an if statement to stop the indexes from going too far?
Right. Yeah.
As a way that we can so that there's like a special type of loop that it goes hand in hand with arrays. Absolutely hand in hand. And really the practical application of this is far more obvious when you use it with arrays. But I will just show you without an array as well. I just want to make this array a little bit longer. Just add some colors in there. Bisc, and then maybe bisc again, and then finally for a third time as well. And then we'll also put bisc at the beginning as well. Right there. Good. Great. Okay. So it's called a for loop. It's called a for loop. And they operate in this particular way. In fact, let's just do this. Let's just move all this down and let's just write it as it is right here. And we'll get this guy to say for loops. It's a weird convention on why it's called for. This was something that actually really got in the way of me understanding this. Like the word for is very strange, but it's essentially saying for everything in this range, do this. For this many times, we're going to do this. For each item of clothing you have, put it on, right? That sort of it's that sort of sentence.
Right.
For all of these, do this thing. And so it looks like this. For, and then we have, this is what makes them so powerful. We have a variable that we create inside the for loop as part of the statements. So let's say counter, right? This is a variable just called counter. And it starts as 0 and it goes to 10.
Okay.
Loop. For counter equals 0 to 10, do this.
Yep.
Now, on its own, if we just put like this, and then we're going to just update the screen and sleep for 10 seconds so we can just show it. Right. This will just say hi 10 times. So we're not even using our counter variable as part of the for loop here. It's just saying repeat this loop 10 times. Just do this thing 10 times. So it was going to say hi 10 times.
Yeah.
Right? But what we can do is we can actually use our counter variable inside the loop. The counter variable that we use in our for loop, whether it's called counter or whether it's called socks, is local only to this little bit of code right here. Only exists in here. And it will do exactly what we say. So it's going to count from 0 to 10, but it will not actually become 10. Now, this is a convention thing that different programming languages do it differently. Certain ones do it this way, certain ones do it a different way. Certain ones will start at 1 always, and you have to begin at 1. But basically, we did it this way so that with arrays, you are counting up to the number of things in your array, and you don't have to do a -1. I'll show you why that is in a second. So it basically means count up to, but not including this number.
Right.
So let's say we had 5 in here.
Yep.
And in fact, let's because we've already got an array, so let's set that up now. Let's just use it with this here. And let's just not be silly, because I also want to use less objects here. Okay. Right, so we've got how many things? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items in our array. So if I say for I equals 0, so I being a shorthand for the word index.
Yep.
For I equals 0 to 7 loop, and I could say ink colors I, because that's now doing our variable incrementing for us. And then I could take our print, like so, and then we'll just have a loop so it just constantly updates the screen and just shows us that, so we don't have to have sleep in there anymore. Right, so we're just saying print this many times, and increment this variable by 1 each time, and use that variable to access the element of the array that we want.
Yeah.
We've put a 7 here so that we can just easily remember, okay, there's 7 things in this array, so go to 7. If 7 was included as a number, we'd have to put -1, right? We'd have to put 6 here. Now, what we actually tend to do with arrays is we say for I equals 0 to the length of this array.
Aha, okay.
Which means we can now add as many colors as we want.
Yep.
Right? Sage. Mint.
So yeah, if something changed down the line and you suddenly had 10 more colors there, you're not going in and adjusting that number on the 13th line.
It's like using a variable for everything instead. You know, like the exact same thing that we were talking about at the beginning. Like if you use a variable, then you don't have to go later on and change all the values everywhere else. You can just keep adding to your array, and because everything is just counting up to the length of that array. Now, because we can do this, if the for loop counted up to and including that number, we would have to put a -1 here. Otherwise, it's going to try and access the last element that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Because it only goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, but the length of the array is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we don't want it to get to 9. So this is why we made Fuse do this. It's so you could just write for I equals 0 to the length of an array.
Yeah. Gotcha.
It's just different languages do it differently. This is just one of those idiosyncrasies sort of things. This concept that I've just told you about here, Dom.
Yep.
Arrays and for loops. This is quite possibly the most powerful thing I have told you so far.
Okay.
This is everything. Absolutely everything. In fact, I want to just make this a case in point right now. Let's just go into one of the Fuse demo programs. We can just, honestly, we could choose any of them. In fact, I'm so confident we could choose any of the programs that were made in the game jam. We could choose anything. But just in the interest of knowing that things are in a particular place, right, we're going to go into 3D Crazy Shooter. And what we have is any time we want to update something. I mean, for one thing, look, we've got tons of arrays here, all containing explosions and trees and enemies and all sorts. Anytime that we want to process things, like process the trees, look at this. For I equals 0 to n trees, loop. If the state of this tree is not inactive, then change its position, change the scale. If it's connecting with a player, make the player state go to hit. If the scale of that tree is it, this is it. This is everything. This is basically everything in a game. You have arrays containing loads of things. You have for loops counting over those arrays and checking each thing in the array. That is an unbelievably powerful thing to understand. If you get the hang of that, it becomes like just your bread and butter. This is your go-to thing for how do I make a game that's going to have loads of enemies flying over the screen and doing this? Well, you're going to need an array of enemies, and you're going to need a for loop to count over those things.
Yep.
So it's a super, what's the word I'm looking for? Like practical, applicable, mainstream sort of concept that is very, very, very important to grab. So now we can go through our colors. It will print that many colors, and it won't keep going.
Yep.
If we put this into a loop, oops, not the loop again. So we're going to get rid of the loop down here. We're going to wrap all this into a loop like so, and we'll put our update just here. Well, now it's going to keep doing that. So it's going to print all those things, update the screen, and then do it again, and it will fill the screen with those colors in the exact order that we've got, right? So this is how you make stuff like that happen. Very, 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 very powerful technique. So I'm sorry to take up so much time there.
No, not at all.
I just realized I don't want to just throw for loops into this mix without some explanation. And I'm very happy to go over here, Dom. So I'm not, super like hard line cutting off at 9 o'clock. If you're happy to keep going, then we can keep going.
I think if that's okay with you, I think it's nice to conclude this train of thought, isn't it?
Me too. Yeah,
go till we wrap this portion
definitely
up. Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. I just don't want you to think, I have to cram all this into 3 minutes. We'll go until we finish this project, and then we've got something really cool to have there.
Okie doke.
So let's swap back to your screen, and then we can finish this up, and then maybe we can show something at the end. Okay, right. So with all of that in mind, we've got our quiz data. Let's go down to our quiz data in our global variables. And what we need to do is, instead of asking each question separately, we need to loop over our quiz data and ask the question that is found in that quiz data, and then check the answer that they give against each answer in that quiz data. So it's going to involve some changes here.
Yep.
I'm
definitely following.
Cool. Are you? That's great.
It feels daunting, but I'm definitely in line with the train of thought here. Yeah.
Awesome. Right. Let's come down. Let's come down to where our main sort of body of the program is, and now we can, instead of doing all this, let's leave that there.
Okay.
But just before we do these 3 quiz question calls, let's make some space. So there. Yeah. And let's go for I equals 0. To len, and then in brackets quiz data. After the brackets, write loop. So for for every question in our quiz, do this. Now let's put it in there so we don't forget.
Put what in there, sorry?
Let's put the repeat on a couple of lines afterwards so we don't end up forgetting. This is just a habit that I get into. You always write the skeleton of the full thing, because I've just had it too many times where you get the error that says like, unexpected end of program, and you go, hang on, what have I missed? And you got to go through it.
You build the shell, then you start putting the filler in. Yeah.
It's super, super helpful. So what we'll do is we'll start very simple. We'll just say quiz question. So tab this in though as well.
Oh yes, yep. Of course, yep.
And then we'll put some brackets. And then we're going to say quiz data and then in square brackets I.
Sorry, this keyboard's got very tiny arrow keys.
I've used keyboards very similar.
Yeah,
I really sympathize with that. And so that's telling us which question we're on, but we also need to give it the question part of that data because we've got two things in each of these elements. In quiz data I, we have two things. We've got the question and all of the answers. So after that second square bracket, put another pair of square brackets.
Okay.
And put a 0 inside. That is the question part. So if you just sort of remind yourself, just scroll up to our quiz data. You could do that with just the right stick, actually, but you're okay if you've gone. So when we say quiz data I, if you could just highlight 32, 33, 34, and 35 for me. When we say quiz data I, that's what we're getting.
Okay.
And so quiz data I0 is line 33. Quiz data I1 is line 34. Yeah.
Yeah.
Two elements in the array. So that's why we've got these two things in there.
Yeah.
So right, let's go back down to our for loop.
Thank you, because I was struggling to remember or recall what those two elements were related to.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, after this, I'll show you an even better way to represent this data that solves that exact problem. So we've got quiz data question I. So that's the question part. And now comma after the 0, after the square bracket, sorry, in the brackets, that's it. And we want quiz data I1. Yep, perfect.
Yep.
And so, but there is another thing we need, actually. There's another thing we need for each question, isn't there? It's not just the question and the answers. It's the color that we want to print this in.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You know what? Let's preemptively make another element here and then go and add that to our quiz data afterwards. To work back. So let's do comma quiz data I2. In square brackets.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Separate indexes. That's it. Right. So now we need to actually give our quiz data some of this information, right? We need to have bisque, pink, and orange represented in our quiz data.
Right.
So let's go up into our quiz data and let's add a comma after line 34. So on the end of line 34, after that square bracket, we'll put a comma and then make a new line and we'll put the color bisque.
Not
so
in
just
brackets.
The word bisque, not in brackets, not in speech marks.
Like
that's it. Perfect. So that's now quiz data I2 color. We'll do the same thing after line 39.
The pink?
Yeah, I think it was pink and then orange. But don't forget, we'll need a comma after line 39 as well, because we're adding another element to this array, which is found in the question 2 part here. So that's that. And then we'll have the same thing at the end of this one. So we'll have the color. And then we'll have orange here. Right. So now it actually has something for all of those bits of quiz data. Right.
So for each of these, that's our 2.
Yes, exactly right. Now, let's go back down to that for loop function call here, because what I'm realizing is we're passing all of these things separately, aren't we? We're passing it the question and the answers and the color. Now we could pass all of these things as one object. We could say just quiz data I, and then we could go and get that information inside the function. But to be honest, this is just it's a bit of a distinction without a difference. This is very, very much just like however you want to think about this. Let's leave it the way it is for now, because then I like to separate things. And so inside the function, we can just sort of call things very simple names. So if you then take away that space there on line 57, and now you can delete line 59, 60, and 61, and that's done, right?
That is. Oh, hang on.
Our entire quiz is just one line inside a for loop, And obviously, if we had 50 questions, then we only have one line. However, we have a problem. So we've done half the battle. We've represented our data properly, right? We've got multiple answers. The whole reason we did this was so we could have multiple answers for each question. Okay. So our function that called quiz question, let's go up to that. In fact, what you should do, Dom, go back down. Put the cursor at the very beginning of that queue on line 56.
56, yeah.
Yeah, and then press the R button on the Joy-Con. And that will just jump to that function definition.
Hey, look at that. Okay.
Very handy.
I will be keeping that in mind.
Super handy.
Yeah.
Functionality there. Now, it's going to get our question. That's fine, because question becomes question, and that question is just what is the best color, or whichever question it is. But the answer part is now an array of answers.
Right.
Yep. So we now need to do something else. We need to change the word answer to answers, just to remind us that we're going to represent this as multiple answers. This is now not one answer. Make this so on line 18. This is after the art, right? So we're receiving an array of answers. Okay, and now we could. How do we want to do that? Okay, yeah, we'll do this way. We'll do it this way. So this is all fine. We're asking the question. We are getting the answer that they've written in. And now what we'll do, because we're checking a bunch of answers, right? We could write if answer equals user answer. Sorry, if answer's 0, so S and then a 0. Sorry, with the square brackets, that is.
Oh, right, yeah.
Because this is now an array of correct answers. Like that. No space there. Take that space away. That's it. It's up to you.
That's an illegal space right there.
It is. That's a totally non-regulation space. So we could do this and say if answer 0 equals user answer, or answers 1 equals user answer, or answers, but we don't know the number of answers.
Right.
Do we? It might have 1, it might have 2, it might have 3.
Yep.
So what we need is to loop over these answers and check the user answer against them and have some variable that becomes correct or true if any of them are correct. So this is going to be quite different. Yeah. Could you make a line after line 20?
Yep.
And let's make a variable called correct. Correct, and we're going to assume that it's false. So we're just going to write the word false.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's the same as writing correct equals 0, right?
Right.
And we've got 0 and 1 are just, true and false in FUZE are just 1 and 0 respectively. Just to make things very, very simple. So we're assuming that this variable is false. We're assuming that they've not got it correct.
Okay.
This type of variable that we're making here has a name. It's called a flag sort of variable.
Okay.
We use flags. I imagine there's something very, very similar in GBG.
There is a flag node on.
There you go. Excellent. Perfect. So it's something that we just set up so that later on, if that flag is being held up and it's set, we can do something.
Okay.
So we're assuming it's false. So now make another line, and in fact, maybe make another, just a bit of a space. Yeah, do like a couple of lines and then move up one line. That's it. And now we're going to do for I equals 0 to len answers. So for each answer that we pass as correct answers. So it doesn't matter how many there are because we're using len. So I equals 0 space 2.
Sorry.
As in TO, not the number 2. That'd be text speak for loops right there. And I say I'm going to say well done for persevering as well, Don, because you're doing super, super well, and you've leveled up here to some far more complicated code. And I understand that you're like right on the edge of your understanding here. So that's awesome. You're doing fantastically. Dave, and I realize I'm just giving you a lot of instructions.
No. Dave, thank you. Not only are you a great teacher for this stuff, but your instructions are very clear. That was quite new, and I think I have written this elsewhere, right?
Yes.
I equals
Yeah.
probably down, but it's just not cemented in my mind yet.
Totally. I mean, this is something like, you know, like how I said that these for loops are so powerful and ubiquitous. This is one of those things where, like, that's probably the fastest thing I can type on a keyboard is for I equals 0 to len loop. I just do it too many times.
Yeah. I'll be slowly speeding up as I go.
So len,
Yep.
len, and then in brackets we're going to put the answers array. And RGC exists. Ubiquitous is one of my favorite words. It just means common. It's all over the place.
Very fun one
You
to
see
say
it
and
everywhere.
to spell.
Say what, sorry?
It's a very fun one to say and to spell. Oh, I just realized RGC is doing a very good pun though as well.
Oh no! Oh, I'm wounded by my inability to see that. I'm so sorry.
Very good.
Now that is truly embarrassing right there. Of course. I am so sorry RGC exists. I hang my head in shame because I didn't see that, okay? I'm going to not stop thinking about that. That'll be one of those things that my brain won't let me sleep because of tonight. So, yeah. Remember when you didn't understand that awesome pun? Brilliant. What a fantastic pun. Oh, dear. Oh, I'm wounded. Right, so put answers in there. And then close the brackets. And then space, and then the word loop. So that's the whole for statement. And then you want to do enter, and put a repeat for just to end the shell of all this. See, Lucian, I'm also very used to the puns. And in the Fuse community, we are crazy on puns. Like we do a lot of puns. And I pride myself on my pun ability, to be honest. But that's why it's hurt so much that I didn't see that. It's one of those. It's sort of destroyed one of my core beliefs about myself.
I think we can. I think we can give a little bit of leeway after a 3-hour plus.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Session.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I'm glad. Okay. Good. Whew. Forgiven. I am vindicated. Right. So online.
Sorry. Foxy says Lord Biquitous, aka... Sorry. See, I even did it. Lord Biscuitous, aka Dave.
Oh, nice one. I'll take that. I guess you're not so punny after all. Nintendo Plus, indeed. That is what it seems to be.
Wow, kicking Dave while he's down.
Kick a man while he's down, honestly. I mean, you might as well just... Yeah, just... God. Okay, all that happiness is gone again.
Oh, no.
It's funny how just the chat is so powerful.
Yeah.
Just control my emotions like this.
Don't worry, Dave. I'm going to do some great coding here to hook you back up. Right, we've got repeat.
Yeah, so go on line 24, and what we're going to do is put the same if statement that we have on line 27. We're going to say if answers I in brackets this time.
Am I right to indent here?
Yeah, you're perfectly correct to indent there. So you're picking up the intuition there. So I in square brackets.
Yep.
And then equals.
Okay.
User answer.
So we're comparing with the equals.
Yep, that's right. We're saying if any of the answers we find in the answers that we're telling it are the right set of answers. If any of those answers are correct, if any of those answers match what the user has said.
Yep.
Then, so let's put our then in there, and then give it 2 lines, and then end if, just to get the shell completed. Yeah, and then up on line 25, tab in, and we're going to say correct equals true.
Right, yep.
And now, on line 29, instead of if answer 0 equals correct, get rid of that whole thing between if and then. And it's just if correct.
Wow. Yep.
Right? So we have, let's recap.
Yep.
In this function, we're passing it 3 things. The question we want to ask, an array of correct answers, and a color to put the whole thing in.
Yep.
we get that information from a data array, which we're also looping over, but we'll go back to that.
Mhm.
So we first of all, we print the question. We allow the user to input an answer. We assume that they've got it wrong because we're really nasty.
He's up here.
Yep. So that's our flag. And so we're going to then check after we've assumed that it's wrong. It's also just to define it as something. And we're going to go over our correct answers. We're going to loop over all of the answers that are correct and say, if the user has written any of these, then we set that correct flag to true.
Yep.
And so even if the first answer that they check is the right one, and then obviously every other one is not what they've written, that doesn't matter because correct will still remain as true. It doesn't suddenly become false.
Yeah.
So after we've checked all the answers, if any of them were correct, then we have this correct flag that says, right, after all of them's been checked, if you are correct, then print correct, add to the score. If it's not correct, do the incorrect thing. And now we're done.
Yep.
Now we're complete. So if we go back down to our main loop area, our main for loop, that is it. And so if you want to add another question, you don't even touch this part.
Yeah.
All you need to do to add another question is just add another chunk of data.
Yeah.
Our data array. Yeah, you'd put a comma after that square bracket. You'd press enter. You'd do another couple of square brackets. You'd just copy that whole format and you'd add another question. And because everything goes up to the length of the data and it's all passed around neatly and all that, you never need to specify anything else. They could have any number of correct answers. And yeah,
very, very
it's quite
nice.
a powerful quiz program there.
It certainly is. Nice. Dave, I love that we've gone from what was functionally a working quiz to something now that is far, far more expandable with minimal fuss, just as you've described there, just replication of the formatting of question 2, 3, 1, whichever one you want to pick. And yeah, we could get wild with this, with the number of questions.
That's
all
exactly
thanks to
what it's all about. It's
functions,
about like
arrays.
Yeah, exactly. Like we've done a bit more heavy lifting at the beginning. We've had to learn a couple more abstract concepts, but the result is that we actually have to do less work.
Yeah.
Eventually. So it took a bit more work at the beginning to just make sure we understand stuff. We built the tools that we're going to use for the rest of our program. But then that means that because we've done that work, to make another question is just absolutely trivial. And we could keep coming back to this easily and just add questions no matter what. And we don't have to touch it anywhere else. It's all basically done for us.
And
yeah.
Also, I would, if you'd shown me this 3 hours ago, I wouldn't have known what any of this meant. But by going through it a step at a time and kind of souping it up almost each time we've kind of done a pass through this, you've really given me a road to understanding how we arrived at this point.
Awesome. I mean, that's exactly what I wanted, and it's exactly why we've done it the way we did. If I just sort of had that program on screen finished in the way that it is now, and I said, right, let's talk you through all of these concepts. Like, there's just no hope. There's no hope of retaining all of those things. You've not been shown, you've not been led around the garden to see, like, this is why we do this is why we do this. And I'll tell you as well, it won't just immediately go in because of that either. Like, it's hard. And so it will take some time to do, you'll have to do this again.
Yeah.
And you should do it on your own.
Yes.
And you should try and recreate it. And then this also applies to all the viewers. Like, you should recreate this on your own. Try and do as much as you can without watching the stream. Or if you're not confident, like, just literally do it with us on the stream. Like, type every single line as we do it. And then try and do it again. Try to do it on your own. Try and replicate it. If you can't, no problem at all. Just come and watch the video again and try again. Like, just keep doing it until you feel comfortable making that entirely yourself and you have leveled up massively. And it doesn't matter how long it takes you to do that. Like, this stuff is difficult. And this is something I've really realized as well in teaching this stuff a lot. these concepts are acquired by different types of minds at different rates. So some people really love the idea of functions and they get it no problem and they can just do it. But then maybe they have difficulty seeing all the applications of multidimensional arrays. Some people really understand and really lock into that multidimensional array access sort of stuff. But then maybe they have difficulty when it comes to how do I make a function to do this? Like, just because you don't understand one aspect doesn't mean anything about your general ability to program. Like this, it's like learning a brand new language again. Like we all bring our personalities to the table with this. We all acquire things at different rates, different speeds. There's no point in comparing yourself to anybody else doing this. The only question that you need to ask yourself is like, do I understand this? And if the answer is no, no problem. Let's just about plenty of time, right? I just want to really get that across because it's very easy to become disheartened. And I'm the sort of person, especially when I was younger, that I just, if I didn't get something in a speed that I thought was like, right for me, then I would start worrying about myself and I'd think, oh, am I not capable of this and all this? And it upsets me when I see it. And I want to instill confidence in people.
Well,
yeah.
Dave, I would say you certainly have for me. I'm not the fastest on this stuff necessarily, but I do feel so much more confident in the things that we've gone over. Could I replicate this without a reference right now? Absolutely not. But those concepts are slowly starting to become ever so slightly more ingrained in my mind, and yeah, I think it is really nice to just remind people that this isn't something. It's not flipping a switch. You don't.
Exactly.
You don't do this once and then you've got it forever. It's a thing that you do have to build up over time. And I think the comparisons to any other language is a really good one as well. Now, Dave, I'm going to ask one thing. Hopefully, this wouldn't be a big deal. But I remember you said the way that Fuse handles formatting of text that it displays. I would love to be able to put the Quizzed inside our little intro scene here.
Oh yeah.
Would it just be a case of copying and pasting it into that with some line breaks?
Yes, it would indeed. You might let's do a separate quiz statement, like a separate print statement for it. So if you first of all copy and paste that line 61 and just put that underneath. Yes.
Sorry, I probably did that in a way.
That's okay.
Oops. Okay.
Oh, now it's definitely inefficient. That's
there
fine.
We go.
And then nice. I love that you put that space in there. Okay, and then let's go up and get our Quizzed.
Yep.
Copied and pasted.
Oh, I could have done. Oh no! Is there just a return to the top of the code?
If you, are you on a USB keyboard? You said?
I am. Yeah.
Have you got home and end keys?
It's a short one. I don't think I have either of those. No.
Oh no way! You need to get home and end keys.
I know.
They are.
I do on my real keyboard. I do, but sadly,
so
on my
if you click in the left stick,
to
get the keyboard up, and then there's home and end keys on that side. If you double tap home, that will take you to the very, very top. And you can also use page up and page down to quickly jump around. And yes, end as well is one that you can double tap. If you click in the left stick a second, and if you hold down ZL, and then press up and down on the D-pad, like so, if you do down, that will hop between functions.
That's cool. Yeah, that's really handy.
And if you press up on that one, it should go up to the very top.
Yeah, it does.
So I tend to just use that to hop around everywhere personally. But it's very, very much up to you. So yeah, let's copy all that. And then we will
I am. Oh yeah, I'm going the right way.
Yeah, you're all good. Okay, so what we'll do is could you just put in in fact, actually, this is going to sort of get back to Lucian's point. I believe it was Lucian, I can't remember. We're going to split this function up onto multiple lines. just to make the formatting look a bit more consistent. So if you press enter at the beginning of the line, so sorry, not at the beginning, on the 200, so just before the 2 of 200s. 200, yeah, and then do it on. So if you now tab as well, because we are sort of in a function call, and then do it on blue as well. And then we'll do it on the DOM part, and then do it on the 4 as well, just to sort of get it completed. And then you could see, I don't tend to do this, so it's kind of up to everybody how they want to do it. But you could do like another enter press on just the bracket if you want, but we'll just leave it as it is. It's kind of, this is actually physically hurting me to do. No, it's oh no, it was Voxy. It was Voxy who asked. I beg your pardon. But Lucian, up the question. Okay, right, that makes sense. So this is the sort of thing that you would do to do this, and you could also change a couple of things around if you wanted to. But what you're going to do is highlight the text in between the speech marks here. Just but without. So if you press D-pad left or right to get out of that.
Thank you.
And if you hold down ZR and highlight, but don't copy it. If you just keep it held but press A, that should paste and replace our text. Now, that will work, but whether or not you want to tab things along, but the thing is if you tab things, it's going to change the formatting of how we print this. So let's just see what this looks like for a second.
We'll take a look. Yep.
Yeah. Oh God, where is it?
It's beautiful.
It is beautiful. Maybe we change the size a little bit so we can see I'm the quizzed, or we could get rid of the quizzed part. When you're in this part, when you press plus, it will try and take our answer. So you want to press plus sort of fairly quickly. There you go. Brilliant. But yeah,
so we just need to shrink this down a little.
Yeah, you could just change. Yeah, you've reached for the perfect thing. Excellent.
Yeah, great.
Sweet. Look at that.
Perfect.
Amazing.
Okay. Nice. Thank you, Dave. That was a little bit of an extra, a little tag at the end there, but
oh wait, hang on a second. Could you just press plus again? Just run it again. Have we got the hat orientation wrong?
What a great error to have. No, we're good.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Whew. That's odd because okay, I'm not gonna mess with that. That's somehow working. I don't really tend to use that string formatting thing much. I would personally, if it was me, I would have it's not even a good way of doing it. I think it's better to do it the way you've got it. But I would probably have each line of the ASCII in its own little array, and I would loop over that and kind of draw each one where I wanted to.
That makes sense. To
be honest, I like the way that you're doing it here, and it's something I often just forget exists in. There's a lot of those things. You know? It's all what you're used to, the sorts of things that you're used to using, and what you get used to yourself. So, yeah.
There you go.
Good. Let's have a look. Let's see it in action. Nice.
Perfect.
Oh, gosh, excellent. Now, one last thing before we go. We can go a bit longer. I mean, it depends if you're just happy to keep going with it, because I'm not super fussy really. But definitely want to do this one last thing.
Okay.
At the very least, and that is, you remember how you mentioned that you had to double check. You see in our line 74 there. We've got 0, 1, and 2, and we had to double check which one was which. And I said it's actually a better way to represent this. There is another type of data structure, very, very similar to an array, but it's called a struct or structure. For short.
Okay.
And without going super deep on these, because we could really go into it, but we're not going to. But it's like an array, except instead of having a number for each element, we have a name for each element.
Okay. Names
And
we can
so-
define.
Exactly.
Huh.
Exactly. Which means that we don't have to remember
Yeah.
which one is 0 and which one's 1. So let's just quickly do that because it's something I want to show people that
Yeah,
you
of
can do.
course.
So in your quiz data array, Yep. What we'll do is at the start of line 41, if you put a dot
Hmm.
and then the word question,
Okay.
right? And then equals, so space equals space.
Yep.
Right, and we're going to do the same thing on the next line, but with answers.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah. And get our equals in there, and then color.
Uh-huh. Oh, this is interesting. Okay.
So now we have an array of structs
Mm-hmm.
instead of an array of arrays. And in each of the elements of our quiz data array, we have a property. Sorry, I'm going to say that again because these sentences get quite funny. So quiz data is now, well, it will be in a second when you're finished, is now an array of structs with so each with 3 properties, one of which contains an array of 2 elements. Right, so
this one here.
This like nested sort of statement of ridiculous things, and really, like, so when I say, "Oh yeah," so could you create for me a data array of 3 structs, each one having 3 properties, and if you could make one of those properties an array of 2 elements?
Yeah.
Like you're gonna say what?
Yeah.
But really, what it is just a box that has 3 boxes in, and one of those boxes has 2 boxes in. It's just nested drawers. Some of them have got numbers, some of them have got names. It's just a big chest of drawers all the way down, basically.
We've got 3 drawers.
Drawers.
We've got 3 drawers. One of those drawers has got a box in it that contains 2 separate things.
Yep.
Maybe there's stuff outside that box in that drawer.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly that. Like it is just so when you get like the process of getting better at coding is almost like just is becoming able to construct multi-dimensional chests of drawers in your mind. That's not an untrue statement. It's quite ridiculous, really.
No, that is a quote at the back of the box.
Okay, let's finish that off in the rest of these. So, get your .question.answers.color.
Now, while I'm doing this, Dave, if I may, is there some way that we could define the .question.answers and .color so we don't have to replicate this each time for each aspect of our quiz data?
Oh.
I mean, I don't want to necessarily do it now. I just wondered whether that would be something you would do, because
so this gets into the more complex aspect of structs. Now, there is, but actually there also kind of isn't.
Okay.
There is and there isn't. So there is a way to define these properties automatically so that, let's say we had a type of a struct called, I'll tell you what, right, we'll finish this off and then I'll show you a couple of things on my screen.
Absolutely, cool.
And that will answer your question.
Yeah.
So let's now go down to our for loop. And instead of having to remember the annoying 0, 1, and 2, we get rid of the bracket 0 bracket. We keep the I in brackets, though, because each of these is a struct, and it becomes quiz I dot question.
With a space first?
No space there. No space there. Dom, how could you possibly?
I'm sorry, Dave. I've let
really,
you down.
really inconsistent. It's like, is there a space or not? I just heard the sort of tentative, such a valid question. Like sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. It's all convention. does tend not to be for the dots.
I have forgotten. This is not a fault of Strux. This is me. I've forgotten what the second one is now. So I'm still gonna have to look at it's answer, of course, yeah. And then it's dot color.
Answers, because it's multiple answers.
Right.
Silly old Dom and his consistent spacing types. Of course, it has to actually be very inconsistent and very specific given given different circumstances and contexts. So that is way more easy to remember.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's far more readable for someone just reading your code. They can see, oh, right, they're passing a question, the answers, and a color to this to this function that is going to receive those things.
Yep.
And so now we've got an even more readable representation of the data. So that actually gets into structs as well, which I'm very, very glad to sort of shoehorn in there, because it's a super helpful one, and it is something that you see a lot in the FUZE programs. It's a very handy way of representing data, because let's say that you want to have like, oh yeah, fair enough, yeah.
Was it like this?
I'll accept this as a way.
Okay.
So yeah, keep going.
And then like that?
Yeah, and then tab all those in.
Oh, yes.
Only 75,
only
76,
ones.
and 7.
Oop.
Yeah.
Hang on.
Ooh. There you go.
Wacky tabbing that.
Beautiful. Okay. Now that is quite a nice way of doing it. I can see that. I can see that being, so it's one of those totally context dependent things.
Yeah.
When it gets sort of quite long, yeah, I can really see that. Chalupa Joe, out of curiosity, can you program a game that's controlled with the keyboard, or is it only the controller? You can indeed use the keyboard.
Amazing.
We've seen the keyboard being used in some awesome text adventure sort of type games, and we've seen it used for just arrow keys and stuff like that. You can even use the motion controls of the Joy-Cons, which we have seen some awesome things with as well. In fact, on one of the Game Jam streams, I actually had to put a Joy-Con into my sock to punch and kick my way through a motion-controlled adventure game.
Incredible.
Which is definitely not what they tell you to do on the opening screen of most games, where it says like, make sure that you're using the wrist straps when you're like, actually, I'm going to put this into my sock, I think.
Chat was asking me to put all of this on one page. I'm going to see if this breaks the formatting of the Quizzard.
You should comment out the 61 then for now.
Yeah.
Because then if we like it, we can delete it. If we don't like it, we can always bring it back.
Good shout. Now the hat won't line up. So in fact, can we preempt?
Oh, just try it. Try it.
Yeah.
Yes. Good. Well seen, PB.
So we can preemptively maybe see if we can fix that. Yeah, there we go.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I can see why using an array there would actually be very
it would give you very precise control over everything. Yeah.
Nice. I'm going to get rid of the previous line then.
Yeah, sure. 61. Yeah, why not? I think that's a wise thing to do there. So we've got, actually, I'm pretty impressed here.
Me too.
We've gone from a very, very simple program. I'm really, really happy with how this has all gone on. I'd love to do this again, because what we've got now, I feel like, is a very solid foundation from which to start to talk about much more sophisticated games.
Yeah.
So we could, well, not just games, but sophisticated programs, i.e. game programs. We have all the tools necessary. We've got functions, we've got arrays, we've got structures, we've got our loops, variables, if statements, we've got for loops. That is pretty much all we need to start to create something very sophisticated without worrying that, like, oh, how would I do that? Oh, I'll need to use a concept we haven't talked about at all. So in the next one, we'll be able to sort of reach for a concept and say, oh yeah, we'll need to use a for loop for this and that, and it won't be super sort of foggy in terms of the understanding. We've got a good foundation. People can keep coming back to watch all these things.
Yep.
And oh, sorry, yeah, Lucian, I mean sophisticated. I beg your pardon.
Very good.
Chalupa Joe, will you be uploading this game to play in Fuse? That's a cool idea. We could do that and let people download it. Tell you what, I will after the stream, Dom, I'll tell you how to do that.
Yeah, excellent.
And then we can do that, and we can put the game code into the Fuse channel of your Discord.
Beautiful.
Download it.
Great plan.
And I'll do the same thing in our Discord as well, so people can grab that. It's a great thing for beginners, and they could take a lot from this. So really, really cool.
Nice. Oh yeah,
So
Dave.
cool.
Thank you so much. As I said, for guiding me through this in a way that hopefully will be, and I'm confident will be beneficial for everybody in chat who's watching today, and is eager to get up to speed on Fuse and to see, these things take time, but even between two streams here, we've built up some real, very, very powerful skills that will just continue to get more and more useful, I think, as we go through this. Man, chat, can we get enormous wall of cool gamers for Dave, because Dave continues to be so amazingly talented when it comes to not only the coding side of things, but even more importantly, I think, able to communicate those skills and share those skills with everybody, so everybody's knowledge of this stuff improves. It's so wonderful, and I'm so grateful for your time, Dave. We've run over again, but I feel like it was really nice to be able to wrap up.
Yeah, definitely.
The train of
I'd much
thought.
rather have done it the way we've done it.
Yeah.
Much rather. It's been an absolute pleasure, Dom. I really, really enjoyed doing this with you. I think that we make a good team.
Absolutely.
I think it's getting better and better, and I think it's been just, again, I'd really like to thank everybody in the chat for being so lovely and positive, and for all the questions and enthusiasm, and for all the questions that we've had in the Fuse thread on your Discord server. I'll continue to keep having a look at those, and if you want any more questions answered, then please hit me up there. You can find me there. I'll be checking them. Feel free to tag me in things. I do not mind at all. If I can't get back to it straight away, then I apologize, but I'll always do so eventually. And also, we've had a few people join our Discord as well, which have been really, really cool. Definitely check out the YouTube channel as well, as Dom is putting in the chat there. That's super helpful. But this has been a really, really great stream. To be honest, I think it would be great to. I'm going to try and do some more stuff like this, just as myself on the Fuse channel, and we can have you appear on there as well, Dom, if you ever want to. But because of how well it goes and how well we can just sort of go through and guide and respond to the chat, I think it works really, really well, and I'd like to get more, because this has served as basically a really solid tutorial for people, whether they're coming from Game Builder Garage or not. Yeah. Even if they're just starting to look at coding, and that's just, this is their first instance of using it, or they've just got Fuse and this is the only thing they've ever seen. I think it would be a very helpful thing for anyone to see in this, if they're at that beginning stage of their journey. So I'm very grateful to get a chance to do this, especially with somebody as polite and lovely as yourself, with a community as lovely as you've got. So yeah, thank you very much.
Dave, thank you very much. It is really a pleasure to have you on the channel, but it is also a privilege to have you guide me through this. And I know that I will be referring back to these as I continue to learn as well. I think they are a great resource, not just while we're doing it live and there's people in chat right now. There's also going to be people watching down the line who maybe want to refer back to this stuff. So yeah, like you say, I think it's really handy to have this as another avenue for people to learn as well.
Fantastic. I want to quickly say, because I forgot to go back on the question that you asked, which is about setting up default values default things for those structure properties. And I think it would be best if we got into that next time, perhaps, because we can look at that in a bit more detail. But I can talk about it a bit on the Discord as well, because it's going to take another sort of bit of time to really cover it in the way that I want to. So I think we'll leave that for next time
Mhm.
because you've got the basics there, and I think it's been a good long stream, so it's a good place to sort of end the learning, if you like.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Dave, thank you so much. I did put the FUZE Arena channel in chat, but I'm going to post it again. For those of you who have picked up FUZE4 recently, I definitely do recommend the ever-growing catalog of Fuse-related stuff that Dave and the crew are putting out. I watched the VOD of the most recent Game Jam, and it was really, really wonderful. Lots of great creations made, and I think it's really important to check those out if you are just getting started with Fuse, because there's such a array of creations being made, much like we see in the GBG community streams each week. There are folks who are making their very first game. There are people who have been there forever, and seem to have have a magic touch when it comes to making things in Fuse, and seeing everything
really
in between is so exciting.
Yeah, I think it's really important because whether you're a beginner or you're a veteran, like there's people submitting to our game jams who, it's their first time. It's their first time, and they're like a young user, and they're getting help from their parents, and they're submitting for the first time. It doesn't matter if it's a super incredible program, like if you're one of the scrubs of the world, as in scrubs from your community of the world, and ours as well. But like, if you're a hyper proficient programmer and you're making something like super involved and sophisticated and genius, that is incredible. And I obviously beside myself anytime I get to play something like that. But even if it's just like a quiz that you've put together that you're happy with because you've done that and you want to show that off in one of the game jams and it's of the theme vaguely, that's awesome, and I would love to see that too. So it's about celebrating your creativity and your effort, not about sort of comparing yourself to other people. Our game jams don't have winners and they don't have a ranking. Like, we don't say, oh, this is the winner of the game jam. It's just about everyone bringing something to the table and encouraging each other and lifting each other up. It's a very, very important point. So we'd always love to see new submissions. So yeah, and there will be another one at the end of the month. So I'll look forward to that one as well.
Yeah, me too. I will definitely be checking it out live when it rolls around. Right. I guess it's time to wrap up for today.
I suppose so.
But I can't believe that we've gone from having, a blank page here to having a little quiz, a little bit more than a little quiz in terms of the expandability, as we said before. So, Dave, thank you.
I mean, to reiterate it, like, we could have done that in the exact, like at the start, we started with like lots of copies of separate clumps of statements that all. Yes, it would end up being like 200 odd lines of code. Well, actually far more than that. But it would do the exact same thing when you press the plus button. And so if that's what you want to do, that's absolutely fine. But the magic of this one is just in the locking of things together and seeing how neatly things fit in. And I mean, I really love that aspect of coding. I think that every time you understand one of these little abstract things, like, oh, I can put that here and now this is this, and like, that is a great feeling, and I've been very, very grateful to share in that feeling and to be a part of your journey, Dom, and to hear all of your moments of like, aha, and oh, that's really cool. And
there was
when you said, I
so many
like
this time.
functions and arrays, it's so cool. It's a pleasure. It is an absolute pleasure.
There was so many aha moments this time round, and I think they wouldn't have been possible without those fundamentals the first time round. And I know we're still kind of in the fundamentals here, but it was a real nice progression for me and hopefully for those at home.
Yep, totally.
So good. Okay.
Thank you ever so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And,
I'm just wondering, is there any last things you'd like to mention? I suppose there is a link to the Fuse Discord in the description of this stream and the last stream as
awesome.
well. And the Fuse Arena forums too.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, I think that's pretty much as we'd like to say. We are making like a lot of YouTube shorts and TikTok videos as well at the minute. So if you do use TikTok, it would be awesome to have a follow. Just search for FUZE Arena and you'll find us. We've got some very silly videos. It's like minute-long little coding shorts that are quite silly, and they're quite fun to make. And if you want to see me being a bit daft, then I think you might enjoy them. But yeah, so that's another area in which we're always just looking. We want to improve our gravity and stuff. So any follow that we get, any comment it's super appreciated. We read them all and respond to them all. But yeah, I think just pretty much exactly what you've said. Just you can find us at those places. We're very, very responsive. We're a very small team. But when you talk to the FUZE company, like, you really are talking to real people, and we love to hear from people. And if you are in the UK, then maybe it's also worth checking out just fuse.co.uk, which is our main website, because if you're in sort of the south of England area, we have an actual site where we do our coding workshops, and we are starting after school clubs, and we do holiday workshops as well. And so if that's the sort of thing that you think someone might be interested in, or that someone might be interested in, or you've got relatives with kids, or you want to come to one of them yourself, like, we would love to meet people. So you can always get in touch with us and check out the FUZE Centre, it's called, which is our sort of headquarters in Oxfordshire. So yeah, that would be really cool. I think just to get that out there as well, so you're aware.
Definitely.
We've got a little sort of computer and gaming museum there with all of our old collection of old machines, a few arcade cabinets, and we've got like 4 big screens at the front of the room where we do this sort of thing like all day, which is usually great fun as well. So yeah, I'll put that out there just for the last sort of the last bit there, just without not wanting to forget that that's also a very big part of what we do. So yes,
something we haven't covered before. I'll definitely have to stop by if I'm in the area sometime. And
it would be an absolute pleasure, mate. It would be an absolute pleasure. Would love it. It'd be great to meet you.
Yeah, you too, Dave. Chalupa Joe, one last comment from chat. Chalupa Joe says, on my way to the headquarters to pitch this quest for...
This quest is actually a fantastic name.
Because
it is, like, each word borrows like half of the other word. It's great. It's great.
Nice.
Oh dear.
Shall we say hello to the Quizzard just to say goodbye to the stream, I suppose?
Sure thing. Yeah.
Here we go.
There he is.
All right. Bye, Dave. Bye, chat.
Bye, Dom. Thank you very much, guys. And I look forward to seeing you again.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.